stadium special over here on one screen and us on the other.
All right, so we are live. We're live on the I don't know what we should call this. I have the Banner Time build-up logos up just because that looked the best. But we're doing a special NBA free agency live stream as it gets set to kick off. And I say kick off. It feels almost like, I don't know what the good comparison would be, but like NBA free agency's already started. It's basically like the moratorium period basically is all year, and then this is the end of the moratorium. That's what it's turned into at this point, because it feels like we know a lot of the moves that are gonna happen, but we're about 15 minutes away from when those moves can become official. And it feels like I just said, it feels like we already know 3, 4, or 5 of the moves that are gonna happen just as the clock strikes 6 o'clock.
Well, you've seen that stuff about John Collins and the Hawks. Apparently, they're not close to an agreement right now.
Crazy, absolutely crazy. I'm excited. I think he could go a lot of places.
Yeah, John Collins, to me, he was a guy that was kicked around at the trade deadline as a player that potentially the Hawks didn't want, and it seemed like they had problems. They had issues all season. Then the Hawks started winning, and it seemed like those problems went away very quickly. But it's quickly turned into a situation where, John Collins said, he seemed to like Nate McMillan. He seemed to like the situation there. And the issues of Trae Young's not getting me the ball enough, but everyone went away. And now that it's time to pay him again, I guess those issues are maybe popping back up.
It's a thought. I thought that the run that Atlanta had was something that no one really saw coming. Personally, I'm just shocked by it all. The fact of the run that they made. I think he's an important piece moving forward. It's just a matter of, okay, was it an issue before when Lloyd Pierce was coach, and all of a sudden Nate McMillan just managed to make it all click and they could go from there? I think if it wasn't the case, hey, Barton's in the chat, let's go. I think if that weren't the case, I think they would have moved him by now. If they thought that they couldn't retain him, I think they would have moved on. I think they could keep him. It's just a matter of they went out and they drafted Onyeka, and you also have Clint Capella. So it's a matter of figuring out how those pieces work long term. Because I think right now, Atlanta was so much better than anyone expected, myself included. So now it's kind of like, where do you go from here? How do you improve? Because they came so damn close. They were very, very close.
Yeah. I think Atlanta had a really good draft too. So I don't think, picking up Jalen Johnson at 20 is crazy value. Picking up Sharif Cooper at 48 is even better value. They struck gold in the NBA draft. So if they do end up losing John Collins, I'm not saying Jalen Johnson can be John Collins immediately, but I definitely think I'm really high on John Collins. I think he's somebody the Hornets could have targeted if James Bouknight didn't fall. So I don't think they should give John Collins a max contract just to keep him around, which may be a hot take, but because I think there will be teams out there who will throw him a max contract and have the
ability. Jack, who do you think those teams will be in free agency?
So it doesn't make much sense, but they don't make much sense. I think the Spurs will probably throw him a max contract just because why not? I think the Thunder are always a sleeper team because they have a ton of money, and a pairing of Shea and John Collins for the future is pretty good. The Mavericks are gearing up to make a max slot, which is crazy as it sounds, but not that would even be a good fit. And then obviously the Knicks have a ton of cap space too. So any of those teams can see that. Yeah, they also
Pelicans would be an interesting fit because I don't think Jackson Hayes fits there long term. Plus, the whole altercation with the police and LAPD, I still want more details on that. But anytime a player gets involved with that kind of thing, they might just part ways just to kind of give a fresh start for both parties. But the fact that they're going up to the deadline right now, to start a free agency, and they're far apart on an agreement, is not good. Something else I just saw get put in one of my chats. Celtics apparently are a dark horse to land Spencer Dinwiddie. This is via Schultz report.
I have seen that too. Yeah.
So I don't think they can pay him, but
yeah, it was Chris Mannix that reported earlier that the Celtics had interest in him. And he also said within that, he also said within that Dinwiddie, or I guess Howard Beck originally reported Dinwiddie was seeking 5 years and 125, which is
not happening, dude. No one's paying that. I'm sorry.
Celtics, and so the only way that would work, and by the way, this hasn't the Tristan Thompson trade still hasn't become official. So the only way that would work with the Celtics is if you package Smart and Thompson together in a sign and trade to get Dinwiddie, in which case you could say, forget even the sign and trade. If say Dinwiddie was just a player under contract somewhere, you could debate whether you'd want to even do that in the first place of Smart and Thompson. Like that's not just a sign and trade. That's a real trade. Like that's a lot to give up for a guy that currently is a free agent. So to me, the Dinwiddie stuff is kind of piped to me. And I tweeted this out after the kind of Dinwiddie thing came down the pipe, like that it feels like just any free agent out there possibly that you could think of, any name, like the Celtics are interested in them. It seems like over the last 24 hours, we've had the Celtics are interested in this guy, that guy, everybody. It's ridiculous. Reggie Jackson, guys that you would think like they just
I like
don't
Reggie
have the
too.
money to afford
I like
these
Reggie
guys on the
too.
market. Like it's like I'm waiting for the other ones. Like the Celtics they're trying to get a meeting with Kawhi Leonard. Like we'll see if they like it's crazy. And that's what we expect from NBA free agency. But it's like, come on.
Is it though? Because I feel like it hasn't been like this in recent years. Like when Danny was at the helm, I'm not saying Brad's doing a bad job, but it just seems like this year more than in years past. There's more Celtics stuff. There's more Celtics rumors. And maybe that's just because they are trying to make a lot more moves. But I think that probably directly related to the fact that Brad Stevens is in charge now, right? He's like, all right, I've seen how Danny Ainge has done things. And now that I get to do it, I'm going to do it, right? I'm not going to sit back and, perfect the perfect deal. I'm going to try to put the best, roster around Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown possible. And I'm not going to hesitate.
Yeah, I think it also waters down to there's a lot of mistakes that happened in the past that the Celtics now have to correct. One of those is Tristan Thompson. That was just not a deal that's working right now. He doesn't quite fit on the style of play that they want to go with. So I think there's no shock to anyone that Tristan Thompson's on the move. But there are other things on the roster that are a problem. Some of the younger guys. I mean, Carson Edwards never lived up to the expectations. That Matisse Thybulle trade was a mistake, clearly now in hindsight. Bosky could really use a defender like Thybulle as part of the rotation. But, you have to make a decision on Grant Williams. You have to make a decision on Romeo Langford. And also, they've talked about, Brad Stevens having to make decisions on Marcus Smart long-term. Are you going to come to an extension agreement now? Same thing with Robert Williams. So, there are other pieces at play. And there might be some that they sit out and just see what happens and go through this season and, kind of see how the ball rolls, I guess, next year in off season. But right now they need to position themselves not only to be able to be a player in free agency next year to try and potentially get after a guy like Bradley Beal, but to just be generally good. Like bring your floor up is basically what I'm saying. You have to get some veterans in here.
And that was the interesting thing about the trades they've made, this and the trades they're supposed to be interested in. And I pointed this out as well, was that, and it's not official yet, but they supposedly bring in Chris Dunn, pending that becoming official, and they go and bring in Josh Richardson, and you hear this rumor immediately comes out after that they're interested in Kyle Anderson, and those are all guys on 1-year deals who have 1 year left on their contracts. So that to me was a huge signal of like they're trying to preserve whatever cap space they can possibly have for next offseason, which was potentially a signal at chasing Bradley Beal. Now, there's still a lot of various reporting on Bradley Beal about whether he wants to leave, what's going to happen there in Washington. And I would say, and I made this point before, that like sacrificing moves now for a move that you're not even sure about a year down the road wouldn't be something I was generally in favor of. And that's why I thought they were going to the Lonzo Ball stuff, and they had rumors interested in other players because they didn't want to be like, well, we have a team that can win right now. We don't want to make this group less, viable in the next season in playoff contention, just so that we can maybe have a shot at Bradley Beal. But certainly so far, the moves that are actually official, or at least very, very close to being official out there, would signal that they're trying to save some cap space for next offseason.
Yeah, and I think that's the smart move. Even if you can't get Bradley Beal, there'll be plenty of other, bigger name free agents on the market then. So I'm looking forward to see what they do with that. But I think the Celtics will end up making some surprising moves. What if it's not tonight, then tomorrow or in the next few days? Like obviously everyone saw the report. Oh, Jeff Green, Avery Bradley, Kelly Olynyk, Rudy Gay thrown in there, Isaiah Thomas today. I feel like that rumor gets brought up every 2 months, but still, it's probably more real now than ever. So I'm very intrigued to see what they do. I'm also like, even past the Celtics, I think this free agency like tonight's going to be absolutely insane. There are some moves that are obviously already quote unquote, Woj putting out the tweet, oh, they're moving towards this like he does on draft night when he's not actually allowed to spoil the picks. Like Lowry's probably going to sign with the Heat. Apparently DeRozan's going to join him there for the full MLE as another thing. So plenty of things are happening. I'm excited to see who goes where. Fournier to the Knicks is another one that's apparently progressing forward. So I'm very curious to see how many tweets we see at 6 p.m., which is now in 6 minutes.
It's ramping
Jack,
up.
I want to ask real quick, and I don't want to say, by the way, that just real quickly about the thing we just talked about of the Celtics making these one-year deal moves. They can still be a very competitive team next season, even if they decide to go that route. Like if you just put a team together the way they're doing it now with Josh Richardson and, Marcus Smart and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and the guys they have right now, like that's still a really good team. That's still a competitive team. I don't think they're throwing away next season if they do that. I just think that there are other moves you could possibly make that you're not going to be able to, that people might look back and second guess. But I did want to ask you, Jack, because you were just talking about, now I completely lost my train of thought. What was the last thing you were mentioning there before? Before you cut you off?
I was talking about Fournier to the Knicks, Lowry and DeRozan to the Heat. Right,
of course. So when you were on my podcast just a few days ago, you mentioned Fournier to the Knicks Fournier leaving in general being like, I know you kind of went back on it, worst case scenario, and I think you mentioned panic mode before. I know you kind of said, well, maybe not panic mode. I want to know, a few days later, now that we're kind of seeing that it's trending further in that direction, what are your thoughts on that now?
I still think it's probably the worst thing that could have happened. Brad Stevens did a great job of patching it up by bringing in Josh Richardson. Like by getting Josh Richardson, who obviously isn't as good of a shot creator or shooter or anything as Evan Fournier, is a much better defender, I will say, and I think can be a better playmaker, or maybe not to that level, but he is a playmaker at the very least, and he can be a shooter like he showed in Miami. I think that patched up a lot of holes that would have happened, because if you lose Evan Fournier and then you bring in like another guard or another big man with that MLE, not that Brad Stevens would have, then you're in a much worse position because you don't have that wing depth. You don't have that extra, tertiary scorer. And I don't even know if Josh Richardson can be that, but at least you don't have nothing in replacement for Evan Fournier. So I still think it's really bad that they're not going to be able to bring him back. But at the same time, for the price he's now asking for, like when I said that, I assumed he'd be around 13 to 15 mil. And from what it sounds like, he's going to sign for 18 to 20, which is just a little bit out of the budget, I think. So Brad Stevens did a great job of patching it up by bringing in Richardson. So
I think it covers your bases too, right? Like regardless, you went ahead and you used the Hayward TPE. Now they might generate one with Tristan Thompson, who regardless of the details, whether Chris Dunn is coming to the Celtics or not, they're definitely going to be moving on from Tristan Thompson. So they're hoping to create a TPE there. And with this year's salary too, so it's going to be a bigger one. That could be something that they could use to go ahead and add another piece that could help them. I think Richardson was a good add. It shores up at least a little bit your guard position, regardless of what's going to happen with Marcus Smart. You're adding another tough defender. And he had a pretty good run in Philadelphia. He was used a little bit differently in Miami, so I have faith that Ime Udoka is going to get the best out of him as well. In terms of Evan Fournier, right now, I think what I've seen is $18 million a year for 3 years, so grand total of 54, so 18 mil AAV. I guess we'll just kind of see what happens. I thought that if it was around that range, anywhere from like 15 to 18, I thought the Celtics might match. But if they've got other plans, which is also why I'm kind of like, okay, well, what's going on with this like Lonzo Ball talk? Like, what other decisions are they making behind the scenes that we just don't know yet? It makes me hesitant to say they're not going to do it like a sign and trade with Evan Fournier. But again, you have to get the Knicks to play ball with that. And the Knicks have all of this cap space to work with. They've got to keep Randall, and going out and adding Evan Fournier to that core will be good. But
I don't know what basketball you've been watching, but
hey, man,
Josh Richardson is not Jeff Teague level bad.
He is not Jeff Teague. Completely different player, man.
I pointed this out on Twitter. People keep saying this. Where's this coming from? Where are people getting the idea that Josh Richardson and Jeff Teague are similar at all? Like this, they're not.
They're so different.
First of all, Jeff Teague has never in his career been the defender Josh Richardson is. Not at any point.
Nope.
And they play different positions. Like it's I feel even like stupid comparing them. Like, why am I comparing Jeff Teague and Josh Richardson?
27 years old.
And so this is the thing about Josh Richardson. I'm going to go back to the positives again. Before he went to Philadelphia and Dallas, where he was the 4th, 5th option at times. Okay, in Philadelphia, they had Harris ahead of him. They had Simmons ahead of him in the scoring pecking order. They had Embiid ahead of him. And then in Dallas, they had Tim Hardaway Jr., Porzingis when he was healthy, Luka Doncic, sometimes even Jalen Brunson ahead of him in terms of who they had in the offensive pecking order. In Boston, Richardson could easily be the 3rd scoring option. He could very easily be that. And by the way, with Miami a few years ago, he was their number 1 scoring option. He literally led the Heat in scoring just 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, whatever you want to call it. So to me, Josh Richardson is a guy that was an easy buy low candidate. I wrote about it 2 months ago that Josh Richardson was certainly a guy you would want to buy low on. You would want to, see whatever avenues you can get to get him. I didn't think that it was possible, and that they obviously figure out this way with him opting into their contract and acquiring with the trade exception. I think it is a home run move. I honestly, of all the moves Brad Stevens has made so far, this is by far my favorite. This is number 1 on my list. I absolutely love this decision, and I genuinely think Richardson can come in here and be a starter and be a really good player for you the same way he was for the Heat a few years ago. Tim, I see you looking off to the side a little bit with a confused face, and we hit 6 o'clock, so I assume this
was a report from earlier, and this is something I've looked at, especially with the Knicks because of their cap space. Alec Burks is expected to re-sign with the Knicks on a 3-year agreement worth roughly $30 million a year, or roughly $30 million. So I think 10 mil. Yeah.
Lonzo just signed a contract with the Bulls.
Wait, who did?
Lonzo just signed a contract with the Bulls.
It's going to be crazy here. We're going to see Flurry. And
I apologize in advance. If there is Heat news, I'm going to have to write. I have 2 articles prepared already for moves I think will happen. But if I get spaced a little bit,
I've got the dual screen going up, and I got to keep it on my feed.
Sam's just confirmed Lonzo Ball has agreed to a 4-year, $85 million deal with the Chicago Bulls. And we'll see if that eventually does become a sign and trade.
Yeah,
I think we'll see if it has to turn into a sign and trade. But it at least appears for now, Tim, that Lonzo Ball is headed to Chicago.
Love it. I love it.
It seems like all that stuff about the Celtics. It seemed like the Celtics may have been interested. Lonzo was always long for Chicago.
Houston Rockets are working to complete a multi-year deal with free agent center Daniel Tice.
Interesting.
Wow.
All right.
That's from Kelly Iko. It was retweeted by B-Rob.
Okay, another one that I think some people were throwing around the idea of Tice back to the Celtics.
Will Barton
finalizing
an agreement to re-sign with the Denver Nuggets on a 2-year, $32 million. Okay, that's a 16
Will Barton.
That's pretty good.
Wow. It's all going wild.
I know it's all.
I'm gonna keep hitting I keep hitting home.
Waiting for the Kyle Lowry news. I know that Chris
sign and trade agreement.
It's a sign and trade. So are they?
Just said it was a sign and trade.
I wonder if it's going to be that 3-teamer that we saw before, where it was Markkanen's going to Charlotte, Devonta Graham is going to New Orleans, and Ball is going to Chicago. So that might be what's going on. All 3 of those teams hard capping themselves.
Tim Hardaway, 4-year, $72 million.
That's a lot of money. I mean,
he
was big for them, though. I will say
and Mike
that.
Conley, 3 years, 68, back to Utah.
So much money.
God.
Oh
actually,
my God!
Wait,
not bad
3
for
years,
Conley.
68. That's 22.5. That's actually
for Conley though.
22.5,
He's fragile. He's fragile.
I mean,
he's
old,
him, but he's fragile.
Coming off his first All-Star season, and I know there were some extenuating circumstances.
Where's the Lowry news? I need the Lowry.
All right, this is from Mark Stein. NBA free agency officially underway. Day 1 commitments are expected in Miami from Kyle Lowry via sign and trade with Toronto, and Duncan Robinson being an RFA for Miami.
Miami. By the way, this is another small one. Boban Marjanovic back to Dallas. That was rather quick as well.
Love it.
Wow, it's so crazy how they come to agreements so fast.
Let's dive into some of these. Lonzo Ball in Chicago. A lot of people. This was been rumored for months, by the way. A lot of people were unsure about this. People felt
Lowry to the Heat broke by Adam Borai, he's a Heat guy. He's a Heat. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Okay, I want to see the details on this.
But Lonzo Ball going to Chicago, been rumored for a while. They have Kobe White already there. A lot of people were saying that it felt like the Bulls didn't need Lonzo Ball. It felt like a move that Chicago shouldn't be making. They already had their point guard situation kind of decently, figured out.
Unless what is it? It's White, right? that they have. He
Is
might be
David
on. Maybe
Aldridge-
he's on the move. Maybe.
David Aldridge is trolling. Per source, guard Garrett Temple will be going to the New Orleans Hornets on a 3-year deal.
There you go.
Aldridge,
First 2 years guaranteed about $5 million, so they're going cheap.
The New Orleans Hornets.
He said New Orleans Hornets?
Not a team.
Did he?
Which is just not a team.
Right,
no, I bet he messed up. I think he means the Pelicans, and he put.
Or does he mean? Oh yeah.
He definitely messed up.
That's the question.
He definitely means New Orleans.
He said it's the Pelicans. He did say it's the Pelicans.
Yeah, it's the
He
Pels.
responded to someone else and said that it was indeed the Pelicans. So that is
Bro,
where.
Woj better be working on like the bomb of all bombs because Shams is like cooking him right now.
Right.
He is getting beat to everything.
If we're being honest, Shams has been the
one
all offseason. Like
he's been
at the draft, right before the draft, when Woj was saying Kings and Lakers are working on this deal for Buddy Hield, Shams swooped in and said, nope, Russell Westbrook going to the Lakers.
I mean, Woj was right. He was just not right enough, is what happened.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was going to happen, and I mean, Hield's going to be moved anyway, so we'll see.
Lowry's expected to sign a 3-year deal in a sign and trade.
What, $30 million a year?
It doesn't say nothing about salary yet.
I was thinking about this. I was going to say anything over 2 years for Lowry felt like the Heat were going to regret it at the end of that deal. Like in the short for year 1, maybe even year 2, it might be fine. But by the time year 3 rolls around, if you're still paying Kyle Lowry $30 million at 38 years old, that's going to be a tough pill to swallow.
He'll be 39.
Yeah, that is going to be rough. And personally, I don't know what you guys think. I don't think Kyle Lowry makes the Heat serious threats to the Bucks or the Nets. I don't think. And I'm saying serious threats to the Nets. I think. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry, KJ. They got swept out of the first round by the Bucks this season. Obviously, they went differently last time around, but. Personally, I just think that if you stack up the star power on each roster, I'm taking Giannis first, and then it's to me. I guess you take Jimmy Butler second. I'm easily taking Chris Middleton third. Like it's. I guess you have to give Bam and Lowry their due, but personally, I don't see the talent stacking up against what other teams in the East have. So I understand why you have to do it. You want to obviously get as good as you can get. They're coming off that finals appearances from a few years ago. But I think that obviously they had bigger hopes for this offseason. Once upon a time, Giannis was the idea. They just
signed Butler to a max extension.
Wait, what?
The Heat just signed Jimmy Butler to a max
right now.
Yeah, per Shams. Yeah, Shams is saying that they agreed to a maximum contract.
This is what they're doing, right? This is the move with adding Lowry. Is you're trying to expand this window as much as you can. They need to add more youth. If I'm being honest.
Furkan Korkmaz to the Cavs could be a thing.
Also, hearing Reggie Bullock to the Cavs also might be a thing. Also, another thing. B-Rob put this out with Chicago. They're going to have to clear cap space, so there might be a chance that
waive Sato or
they might. Well, Sato they can waive, but then there's also Thad Young that would be on the move too.
4-year, $184 million for Butler.
Jesus.
Ooh. Yeah,
that's a lot of money.
I hate it.
So
I hate
that
it.
Is about
I wouldn't.
46 a year, and I know it won't work out that way. It'll be increasing, but yeah, I think that's 46 million per season.
I think the Celtics scoop Satoransky. I think the Celtics scoop Satoransky.
That could be.
Thad Young makes a lot of sense too, but I do think it's going to be Sato. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Drop the Lowry contract. I need it.
So that was the 6 o'clock frenzy that we expected.
We ain't even done yet.
We'll continue to monitor as it goes on. But let's dive into some of these deals. I guess so far, which one sticks out to you the most is
trade.
What we got?
Satoransky and Garrett Temple and a 2nd-round pick to New Orleans for Ball. Sign and trade.
Okay, I see. That is that's not bad for Chicago at all. Satoransky, Garrett Temple.
No. What is New Orleans doing?
Dude, I swear, New Orleans is the worst run organization in the NBA.
Yeah, well, David Griffin has a lot of friends, so I think that he gets a lot of the benefit of the doubt. But yeah, that especially considering that you heard these rumors of the 3-teamer that could have sent, like you mentioned, Tim Markin into Charlotte and Devontae Graham to New Orleans. That would have been obviously something much more interesting for New Orleans. I think all of us would agree that would be a move that New Orleans should 100% made if it was available to them. But if it wasn't, I guess this is what they had to settle for. It wasn't much, maybe they see something in Thomas Satoransky that they want to try on their team. I don't know. Pretty bleak return if you're the Pelicans. And obviously them wanting to get rid of Lonzo never made a ton of sense. It made a little, there was a time where it made sense, but then he really started to come on at the end of last season, and you saw all these other teams being interested in him, and it just felt like, for whatever reason, the Pelicans just weren't one of those teams. They always seemed like they were ready to move on from him, while other teams were, beating down the door, ready for him to hit free agency and trying to bring him in. Chicago obviously being one of them.
I mean, Satoransky is not a bad piece. It's just I don't see how it makes sense for New Orleans. And obviously he's not the same player as Lonzo Ball. So, like, from a sense of, like, hey, I'm adding Satoransky to my roster, that's, like, good. He's, like, a solid piece. He's a very he at the very minimum is a starter-level point guard.
If you're New Orleans, real quick, if you're New Orleans, how do you – tell me the reason why you do not match Lonzo Ball's contract and bring him back instead of making this deal.
Because I think they're going in a split. I think they were going in a split regardless. So it's like, do you sign and keep a malcontent on your roster, knowing that he doesn't want to be there? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, do you hold on to a guy that just you're not happy with? He's not happy to be there. He's not happy with losing. Like. They would have been. I will say the sign and trade, the 3-teamer should have happened. That would have been a lot better for them.
Right, it definitely would have been. If that was the case, I wouldn't have as much of a problem with it. But if you do match that offer, can you then, eventually trade Lonzo Ball for something better than Thomas Satoransky and Garrett Temple on the second-round pick? I don't know. It is what it is. We got to move on because there's so many other deals. Michael Green signing with the Nuggets. As we mentioned before,
a lot of money.
Making it official. Alec Burks to the Knicks. Interesting because you heard a lot of stuff about the Knicks pursuing DeMar DeRozan, obviously Evan Fournier.
Oh my God!
To you guys, does this Alec Burks deal?
Where's Noel going?
Staying with the Knicks for like $10 million a year.
Okay, so I'm wondering, like, I know the Knicks have cap space, but where is this money coming from?
They had like 50, 60 million cap space.
But that's already 20 mil of it chewed up on Noel and Burks. And supposedly, and you heard these rumors about them potentially going after DeMar DeRozan, obviously Evan Fournier. I want to ask specifically, since they play the same position, how do you think the Alec Burks signing affects their pursuit of Fournier at all? I mean, because I know they can play multiple positions, but they already have Barrett, obviously.
Jared Allen.
We're just
5 years, $100 million. With this. I'm sorry.
No. I'm doing it too. I'm just saying. It's going to happen.
Cavaliers contract. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I mean, we saw that earlier too. I forget who was saying it earlier that it looked like that he was going to go there on 5 years, 100. But yeah. I assume it's not going to be much, but how do you guys think the Burks signing affects the Knicks' pursuit of Fournier?
I don't think at all. I think you need as many shooting and dynamic wings as you can get around Julius Randle and whatever point guard you want. So I still think they'll still go after Fournier hard.
Do you think they should have any reservations about tying up so much of their cap space? Like Nerlens Noel and Alex Burks are 3-year deals. I know that, the whole thing of the Knicks being a destination has turned into somewhat of a pipe dream, but you're really like just shutting down any chance you have of signing big name free agents in the future, whether it be a Beal, a Lillard, by signing Noel and Burks to these deals. I mean, they might be able to find it somewhere else, but eventually Barrett's going to need an extension, and all of a sudden the Knicks go from a team that has a lot of cap flexibility to very little if they continue to make these deals, plus signing Fournier to a multi-year deal.
I don't know. I don't know. According to Keith Smith, they should still have around $30 million in cap space left. And I think if they do want to, get either of those guys, they could just do a sign and trade because those are becoming more and more common. I do.
But they get hard capped.
Yeah, very true. I do have the Butler extension numbers apparently put out by the NBA Central. It's $40.5 million in year one, 43.8, then 47, then 50.3.
50 mil at 36 years old. This is the same thing you're seeing with Chris Paul, right? I'm waiting for that news to drop. We haven't heard a peep, but Chris Paul's going to make a decision on his $44 million option. If he turns down.
Well, he already did turn it down. He's hitting free agency. But the question is on Chris Paul is, because I think going into it, the idea of Chris Paul turning down his $44 million was insane to everybody. It's like, why would you turn down $44 million? You're this age, you can probably get whatever you can get next free agency. But really, if you looked at it from Chris Paul's point of view, if he turns down that $44 million, right, and he goes back to the Suns and says, give me another contract that starts at $44 million, or starts at $40 million at least, or whatever it is. It gets hard for the Suns to say no. It gets really, really difficult after the run they just had and everything that happened. If he says, you know what, I want 3 and 130 or whatever he asks for, it's very difficult to go to Chris Paul and be like, after the run they just went on, for the Suns to, after being mediocre for years, and I know you're gonna
Olynyk to the Pistons.
Shit,
wow.
really?
But I know
37 million.
Dude got paid. Good for him.
At some point, the price gets too high. But I'm just pointing out, whatever Chris Paul asks for, it almost feels like the Suns are stuck in a place where they might have to give it to him.
Well, because unless they have a viable replacement, right? Like they are very much caught between a rock and a hard place. Like you've put it well. The one thing I will say is just that cap hit. Like you have to think about it, right? Like they went on this insane run and they fell short. And Chris Paul was definitely part of the reason why they fell short. How do you get better from here? And can you improve if like 40 mil plus of your cap is tied up with Chris Paul? And they need to keep him. I think one rumor I heard was 3 years, 90 mil, which is still a lot of money for Chris Paul at his age. But unless you have a suitable replacement to go, you're kind of SOL. I think this year's going to be a lot harder for them to get back to where they were. I think that was probably their best chance.
What you're hoping for if you're the Suns is more internal improvement. DeAndre Ayton gets better. Michael Bridges gets better. Like that's what you have to bank on because they're not going to have the flexibility to make many other moves. Let's talk while we have a couple minutes here.
A pause. A lull.
About Kelly Olynyk to the Pistons because that was a name that was linked to the Celtics yesterday by Adam Hill's Bob.
I think the Pistons are going to gear up to make the playoffs next year. And I know that sounds super weird, but from everything I've been seeing, right, we've seen Garrett Temple was rumored there. You've seen, obviously, Kelly Olynyk rumors. I saw they wanted Tim Hardaway Jr. I think they see Cade as a Zion-type prospect, and I think that they don't want to make the same mistakes New Orleans made, right? The New Orleans is like, oh, yeah, we'll get some young guys. We'll get a bunch of young raw prospects. Obviously, I'm not talking about Ingram and Ball, but I'm talking like, Jackson Hayes. We'll get Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I think they're like, nah, we have Cade Cunningham, we have Killian Hayes, we have Sadiq Bey, we have all these guys that are good right now. Let's get some veterans and let's do it. Let's do it right now. And
by the way, another point that you're talking about as far as building it how New Orleans should have built it, get a stretch 5 for him. And I know it's much different.
Exactly.
I know it's much different from Zion's standpoint because next to Zion, you absolutely need a stretch 5. The need is not as drastic next to Cade Cunningham, but even so, opening up driving lanes for your star player is huge. So I think that this move certainly makes Detroit a lot better. I think they're better with Olynyk than they are with Plumlee. And part of the reason for that is what would you say Plumlee's best skill is as a center? His playmaking, right? He's pretty playmaker for a center. Yep. So with the Pistons right now, you have Killian Hayes and Cade Cunningham. You don't need playmaking from almost anywhere else. You need shooting. You need guys for those guys to kick it out to. So Olynyk makes sense from that standpoint.
Pacers TJ McConnell per Keith Smith. Got him back.
No
actual contract details, but
and here's the Mike. I don't know if Woj is just showing up late to the party, but Mike Conley, 3 years, $72.5 million contract.
So that's a little more than, I think, was it Shams who was first on? A little more than
3 for 68, right?
Right, yeah. So about $4.5 million more, so 1.5.
A little under 25 mil. I still don't mind it.
Okay. New York is sitting at 17 mil in room, but that includes 15 mil in cap holds of Derrick Rose, Reggie Bullock, and the 3.3 mil non-guaranteed contract. So basically, they could free up 32 mil by letting all three of those go, but I think they should hold on to Derrick Rose. I think Derrick Rose was a really good piece for them. So it's a question of how much he would cost.
Yeah, and this is a little small and dumb, but Worldwide Bob tweeted out, so I'll mention it. He said, in undoubtedly what is to be the biggest news of the hour, Bol will be at Summer League. So Bol, the Nuggets announced their Summer League roster, and Bol is playing on it. So
this is from Mark Spears. Chris Paul expected to be ready for training camp after recent surgery.
Interesting.
Wow.
Well, it doesn't say surgery on what, but
wrist surgery.
Oh, wrist surgery. Okay, interesting.
Maybe that explains a little bit of it.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if we can get a contract for Chris Paul soon here. But we can talk about some of the other moves. I haven't seen this one, Sanders. I'm sorry, I haven't seen McGrady to Houston yet. But I guess maybe we can go back in the time machine and figure out if we can see that one pop up. This is a good one. Oh no, guys! The Celtics lost another point guard. The Sacramento 5 years. No, that's obviously just a joke. Good one though, Thomas. Very nice. And then Birkin saying we're saying goodbye to Taco. That was more news. That not necessarily, but it seems certainly that it's trending that way. That the Celtics
he's gone.
Chose not to extend the qualifying offer to Taco Fall, which some people were upset at. As certainly as a fan favorite, but. At the end of the day, it just made sense. I think, was he even eligible for another 2-way contract? I don't know if that was going to be.
He was, but it wasn't likely that it would happen. I don't think any other NBA player has stayed on a 2-way contract for 3 straight years. Yeah, it just doesn't happen.
So it definitely made sense for the Celtics to move on, and they already used up one of those 2 ways on a guy, Jack, I know you like, and a guy, a really solid guy, a prospect to bring in on a 2-way, the shooter that they got out of Virginia.
Hauser.
Cam Hauser. So I think that they're already making, and a guy that honestly, as a singular skill, could potentially help you more if you just need a throw shooter in the game and you have him available. So I'm fine with that move so far. Upsetting to lose Taco. I know it was fun to have him around, but hopefully he will find a spot on another NBA roster. His career won't end here, but just someone who, just because of the durability and his ability to stay on the court for long periods of time, it just wasn't there. And his stamina, everything like that, just with his size, it wasn't going to work out, unfortunately, for Taco Fall. But maybe he'll be able to, continue to develop in the G League and eventually find a place somewhere as a bench player. But it seems like it won't be with the Celtics. They're using their
got the package for Kyle Lowry.
Okay, let's hear it.
Where?
Goran Dragic, Precious Achiuwa, and a future second-round pick in the sign and trade deal for Kyle Lowry.
Where do you see that?
This is from Christian Hernandez. Apparently, looks like he is Miami Heat beat.
So that's pretty much, I think, that's pretty much what we expected when we heard they were picking up.
It's retweeted. It's retweeted by Nikias. So if it wasn't Nikias, I probably wouldn't trust it. But he's retweeting it.
I'm not putting out a Lowry article until I see Woj.
That's fair. You should.
So if this is to be true, it's pretty much what we expected from when we saw Goran Dragic that the Heat pick up his team option. It seemed like the way they were trying to operate there was they wanted to. Jack, maybe you can correct me on some of these details too. But being able to pick up his team option, declining Iguodala, allowed them to operate as a team that was over the cap, so they'd still have their exceptions. They'd still be able to sign Duncan Robinson, but trading Goran Dragic was the move there that made the most sense.
Yeah, they wanted to remain a cap team, and this allows them to sign and trade for Kyle Lowry. So yeah.
And by the way, not a bad move for Toronto at all to get Achiuwa in the deal. And Goran Dragic obviously only on a 1-year deal. They could easily ship him off somewhere else because he had a number of suitors.
I heard they're working on a buyout. I heard that's going to be the plan moving forward.
Well, we'll see. I mean, that would that wouldn't hamstring him too much cap wise since he is obviously only on a 1-year deal. But it seems like Dragic, one of the places we've heard, which would be an obvious fit, is next to his fellow countryman Luka Doncic in Dallas. That made a lot of sense. We'll see if they.
I've also heard Lakers, but I've heard everything for Lakers.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have official cap numbers. Cap is going to be $112.4 million. Luxury tax line is going to be $136.6. So cap for 2022-23, this is projections, 119 mil, 145 mil for the tax line, cap level about $4 million higher than previous projections. So this is effective for free agency for this year. And that's what they're operating with, which is, I think, similar to what the projections were for this season. So I think it's around the same ballpark from numbers that I've looked at before.
So real quick, we'll loop back to the Celtics. So again, we have some time here. So far, and we got obviously they've been busy with Josh Richardson and the other moves they've been rumored with, and still haven't made that Tristan Thompson one official. But nothing here so far after 6 o'clock from Boston. Does that surprise either of you guys?
No, not really. Honestly, I feel like Brad Stevens going to take his time, see how everything plays out, and then pounce on some team that needs to make a move, like the Bolts, right? They made the move for Satoransky, but something like that, where a team wants to do something, but they need to make other moves to do it. And Brad Stevens gonna be like, "Hey, you need to make this move. I'll give you a 2nd-round pick. You give me the player," and I think that's what's gonna end up happening.
It feels like it, right? Like they haven't even announced that deal with Chris Dunn, like involving Atlanta and Sacramento and Tristan Thompson. Like they need to do that deal in order to open up any other opportunities for using MLE or anything else like that. So that's interesting. We haven't seen that happen, and we also haven't seen them make any extent. There's been no Evan Fournier rumors, which is both good and bad, right? Like, so like if he had an agreement in hand, it would be signed by now. The one thing that might be holding it up is if it is in fact the Knicks, which is what it's been rumored to, that would be 18 mil for 3 years. They have all of, like, as we discussed before, like they've got some money tied up. They've got about 17 mil in room, but they also have cap holds for Rose, Bullock, and someone else. So they've got some money tied up. But the question is where does it go from here?
John and Tim, I'll let you explain most of this. But the Celtics do not have any cap space. But Tim, why don't you tell a little bit about the options the Celtics do have?
So they do have a little bit of cap space underneath the hard cap. So that is, I'm trying to see if any of the numbers are updated because they do have the Richardson deal on contract. This is based off of Spot Rack. This is all pending transactions. So this is stuff that is not reflected in their cap figure. And it looks, by looks of it, we do have Josh Richardson on the cap. So right now, let's see total cap on this page. Okay, come on. What do we got?
I couldn't find it on there, but I think I added it up, and it was roughly 132, I want to say, is what I added up as earlier.
So here's the thing is it has, okay, so active roster cap right now. They've got 137 point.
Okay.
Almost 137.5 almost. They've got about 33.7 in cap holds. So that includes, let's see, cap holds include Evan Fournier, Luke Cornett, Semi Ojeleye, Taco Fall, and Tremont Waters. We already know that Taco Fall and Tremont Waters are not coming back. Semi Ojeleye, bye. You should not be back. Luke Cornett probably gone if they find a better stretch 5. I think that's kind of a given. And then Evan Fournier, they just have that cap hold. This is just they're basically placeholders. That's how it works. And this is just all off Spot Rack. This is what I've got for updated cap figures. So right now, I think in total cap, they're sitting at right about 137.5. So they are.
What options do they have as far as exceptions to use in free agency?
Right now, I think they're extremely limited because this also includes the fact that they got Josh Richardson. The pending transactions include Tristan Thompson, Chris Dunn, Bruno Fernando. So they haven't cleared any space yet. That's why that deal has to go down. This is also part of the reason why I think there is a chance that Marcus Smart gets dealt, only because they're trying to clear up some space for next summer while also improving. If they, for some reason, are worried about Marcus Smart's extension down the line, there is a chance that he gets moved. Tristan Thompson, he's on the last year of his MLE, which is worth about 9.7. That's his cap hit.
So as of right now, do they have the biannual or the mid-level to use?
No, they don't. They don't have it until they move Tristan Thompson, because they're literally right up. I think they're like a mil over that luxury tax line. So I think the hard cap is going to be a little bit more tricky. I think the hard cap comes in, I think, a little bit. Is it 6 mil after? Hey, Sam's joining us. What's going on, man?
I made it. Sam
you did make it.
For the free don't worry, Sam. You didn't miss the Celtics doing anything. Just the rest.
They haven't done anything.
I know.
Yet,
I have the notifications on.
It's both good and
not
bad.
Having himself a good day.
Yeah,
at all.
Isn't.
Well, not so far. I want to talk about another thing we see in the chat while we're waiting for more moves. If I can find it again. Saying that Brad is a dummy for letting Moses Brown go. And this was something that I talked about yesterday. Maybe I was one of the few. I mean, to me, Moses Brown was always going to be the third center. I understand people have issues of like Robert Williams gets injured, Al Horford is old and all this stuff. But, giving up Moses Brown for Josh Richardson, like that, if you're just weighing the trade that way, and I know you can argue maybe they wouldn't have had to give up Moses, blah, 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 but that's like an obvious win. And so acting like giving up Moses Brown is giving up someone who is going to be a starter for you or like a key piece to your team, which I've seen many, many people do. It's just getting kind of silly to me.
Also, Cameron Payne has agreed to re-sign with the Phoenix Suns on a 3-year, $19 million deal. This is per Chris Haynes.
That's a really good deal. That's a
really solid deal. That's a solid deal for him. For a guy that was like at one point, people were like, yeah, he's a bum. For him to go ahead and have that boost that he did, good for Cameron Payne.
Great value, too. I think
it's for real. I get that. Absolutely.
And this guy's saying Moses Brown is a walking double-double. I mean, it's a little lofty. What Moses Brown was doing for one of the worst teams in the league in the Oklahoma City Thunder should not be, you should not be acting like this was anything viable and something that proves he was going to be,
I think he would have been a good prospect, but if you have the opportunity to add someone of Jason Richardson's quality, you don't hesitate.
Yeah.
Can't be that. Poor Jack, you don't know his name. Josh Richardson.
Oh, did I say Jason?
Yeah, you
did. Hey, Jason Richardson's a stud too, so you can't.
He's just very much retired. I do think right now, I think the fact that like a lot of the Celtics targets that they were looking at outside of, well, at least supposedly Lonzo Ball, and maybe Kelly Olynyk, I guess if you want to put him in there, a lot of their targets are not off the board yet. There's no news on Evan Fournier. There's been absolutely none. We talked about it before you got on, Sam, but I think they've used $22 million of their space right now, and they've got $17 million in space. This is the Knicks I'm talking about because they re-signed Nerlens Noel, and who else they kept? They kept Alec Burks. So right now they've got about $17 million in actual cap space, and they've got cap holds for Reggie Bullock, Derrick Rose, and then one other player that I'm blanking on right now. So they've basically, if they got rid of those players that they have cap holds for, they'd have about $32 million in potential space. The fact is that they haven't even signed him yet. So like Evan Fournier has not been scooped away, which gives me like a glimmer of hope that there is a chance that the Celtics at least will make an offer. The offer that I saw was $18 million, 3 years for the Knicks. That was what I've seen reported both by a Knicks page, and I also had someone else that apparently had a source was saying that like that's the offer that they heard about was $18 million. So $54 million over 3 years. I mean, I guess I'll ask you, Sam, is that a deal that you entertain? Because I think that's about as high as I would go, but I would still consider it.
See, I said this in our little chat earlier. I feel like Fournier is a very tough spot. I said it with Jack yesterday on the pod too. It's like a rock and a hard place because in the very short term, re-signing him is, really gonna help you out. You're gonna have a third scoring option. You're gonna have somebody that can create. It's gonna make things easier on Tatum and Brown. The problem with him re-signing at a big clip, like around where he's looking at, is if you keep him for a couple of years, it kind of erases the moves you've already made, like the Kemba deal, to try and make cap space for the next class and the class after. So I don't really know what you want to do. It depends.
Yeah, we got this guy saying we know nothing about the NBA. I don't know. That's why we're up here and you're in the chat. All right. So I think that's all I'm going to say about that. But
then why are you watching, man? Okay. Like, we're not pretending to be experts or anything. These are our opinions, but if you don't want to watch, you don't have to.
All right. Well, anyway, as far as I want to close the loop on the Moses Brown thing.
All right, man.
Tim,
all right. TJ McConnell numbers are in 4 years, $35 million for the Pacers.
That's a lot of money for him. Good for him. Well, jeez.
And I want to ask you about it, Tim, because I mean, like I said, to me, Moses Brown was someone that was going to play behind Horford and Robert Williams, and he was never going to have a big impact on this team this season. If it, and the Horford thing, if you're talking about use down the road, you can debate things back and forth. But like, if you came to me and said before the offseason, said, what do you think the difference is between Bruno Fernando and Moses Brown? I would say it's marginal. It's either way, you're getting a young player that wasn't very highly touted coming out of college. And it's a fine center, but it's no one that anyone should be broken up about losing, especially when you're talking about getting back a player who is proven in the NBA in Josh Richardson. And by the way, this was another point that I think echoes what we're trying to say here. Fans love talking about guys who have never done anything in the league as if they're perennial MVP candidates. And that's what I keep hearing about Moses Brown. Like, I can't believe you brought in this player that fits perfect with your team, great value, buying low, Josh Richardson, and people are complaining about Moses Brown as if it matters when it really doesn't.
Look, I'll say this right now. Like, I was very excited for Moses Brown. And of course, like, what everyone thinks of is he dropped like a damn near 20. He dropped a 2020 game in like the first half alone. Like,
real quick, Tim, like Bruno played, Brown played, Bruno didn't. That's because Bruno was on an Eastern Conference final team and Brown was on a team that was in the lottery. Like, what, you know. And look, by the way, before you continue, Tim, I want to shout this guy too because he did donate to the channel. Just found the channel, enjoying the support.
Cool.
Thanks so much. We just got over 1,000 subscribers, so we got monetization. So shout out to you guys.
Cool.
In the chat. But anyway, Tim, continue your point on Moses.
So for Thomas, look, I understand Moses Brown was dropping double doubles while playing some good ball last year, even while he was playing in an OKC team that sucked. Okay, but my counterpoint to that is yeah, he played on a really bad team. He played on a team that was destined for the lottery, and he got double doubles. That's how that works. You play for a bad team, you're gonna put up stats. Like, that's what happens.
He wasn't even on a real contract for the bad team until he played well enough to earn a contract.
He literally got that contract after the Celtics. After he got that 2020 game, they literally signed a big old contract like at halftime. They're like, yeah, here you go. Here's a 4-year deal. And like, it wasn't crazy money, but he was a two-way guy up until that game against Boston. And you know what? Look, I think he's got a really good opportunity ahead of him. I think he's a young player who's got some promise, but again, like, am I hung up on moving him? No, because they literally just got him. He hasn't even played a moment in a Celtics uniform, so it's hard for me to get attached to him. It's the same thing with Chris Dunn. Would Chris Dunn be cool? Great, yeah, but if he ends up getting moved somewhere else, okay, I'm not heartbroken over it.
Yeah,
you know, it's hard to get attached to guys.
Yeah,
thank you again.
Time. And by the way, I will bet anybody any sum of money that Josh Richardson averages more points next season than Moses Brown. Any sum of money, I'm willing to bet on that. But anyway, I know that's silly where things go. But anyway, I don't even know if Moses Brown is going to play that much for Dallas because they just re-signed Mcdermott. I don't know what Dwight Powell's situation is. Is he healthy for next season? And he's still going to be with the Mavericks. So I don't see any reason in which Moses Brown is even going to. By the way, this is the other funny thing about this. I don't see why Moses Brown is going to make a big impact with them. This is the other funny thing about this. Dallas didn't want Moses Brown. They didn't want anybody. The Celtics were trying to get them to take back any money that they possibly would accept taking back. Dallas wanted nobody, and the Celtics pleaded with them to take any salary back, so they eventually took Moses Brown. That's what happened there. So the idea that that's for some reason the Celtics, Celtics should be broken up about losing Moses Brown is just ridiculous. But anyway, more things to get to. Yeah, I can't believe Moses Brown is even a conversation. And Thomas said I'll take that bet. So thank you. I'm going to be how much Richard. I'll bet $100.
See you next year.
Yeah, my Venmo is Cage. No, well, if anyone wants Venmo, me just DM me.
If you think that Moses Brown, never mind. I'm not even going to get into that conversation. Just continue.
And more news. If we want to get into some of the more stuff that's come down the pipeline while we've been talking, Trae Young and the Hawks are expected to finalize a 5-year, $170 million extension, which could be pushed to obviously the Supermax if he reaches the All-NBA and All-Star incentives that you need to get to the Supermax level. So a possibility for him. And also, we didn't mention it, but the Jason Tatum Supermax numbers were tweeted out by Bobby Marks, just because those were technically made official because of the cap being finalized. So Jason Tatum, Donovan Mitchell, Bam Adebayo, and De'Aaron Fox all making the same amount, a total of $168 million over 5 years. So the Tatum's numbers are going to be $28 million this season, 30.3 next year, then the next 3 following 32.6, 34.8, and 37.1 is what it's going to end up at. So those are Tatum's extension numbers. And with the gaudy numbers that we've been throwing around for some of these other NBA players for their extensions, that's not too bad.
So this is from Mark Murphy. This is per league sources. Marcus Smart is likely staying now that Lonzo Ball has signed with Chicago. Any roster additions will be quote unquote on the margins.
So that's interesting. Obviously, Mark Murphy with the Boston Globe from there for a while. But the thing about the Marcus Smart,
the Heat.
The thing about the Marcus Smart rumors that is so troublesome to me is that we've heard Marcus Smart's name in rumors for how long now, right? We heard it dating back to the trade deadline. I mean, it seems like every year, but really it got really aggressive around the trade deadline, and then through the summer, you heard Chris Mannix say today that Brad Stevens is very eager, however he phrased it, to get off Marcus Smart, and he expects that then it's more likely that they trade Marcus Smart. So you have to wonder, with Marcus Smart, is a very emotional guy, a very passionate guy, how this is going to affect him on the court and going into the Celtics locker room, with the appearance that they've been pressing very, very hard to trade him. So I assume he's going to go to the Celtics and say, where's my contract extension? And if nothing starts to culminate there on top of the trade, his name being involved in trade rumors, he's not going to be too happy.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, he's someone that wears his heart on his sleeve. He's someone that's expressed his love for the city. So if he's feeling like he's not getting that back from the team, of course, he's going to be upset. But very happy to hear that he's not going anywhere right now. I'm so happy.
And Duncan Robinson, by the way, this is another one. Duncan Robinson, 5 years, $90 million with the Heat. So that's going to be.
I told you it would be a bag, Sam. I told
roughly
you.
$18 million per year. Which, I mean, to me, $18 million per year, it's a lot. It says the deal, the largest ever for an undrafted player. Also includes an early termination option after the fourth year. To me, that's not too bad at all. I mean, 5 years is a long time. The length of it is a bit surprising, but the annual value to me isn't all that surprising.
I'm just wondering where the moves come from now. I mean, we haven't heard anything on Fournier still.
Fournier's still been quiet. This Instagram story looks like from Kyle Lowry, or I don't know who this Instagram story is from, but the Miami Heat, Kyle Lowry, let's go, all this stuff. But I do want to ask, Tim, what do you make of the Duncan Robinson contract?
I mean, I think that's a lot of money. At the same time, I think that's good for the league, to be quite honest. I think an undrafted player.
Sorry.
Okay. I think that's good money. I think that's good money for him. I think it's a lot of money, but at the same time, he's an undrafted player. The fact that he was able to go out and get that kind of contract, I think that is a positive sign for the league. Like there are opportunities if you go out there and earn it. In terms of Miami, it's interesting because, they just went out and they spent a bunch of money on Kyle Lowry via sign and trade. And they were able to go ahead and retain Duncan Robinson. Because they went out and they're waiving Andre Iguodala's contract, and they're also going to be sending Dragic back in that deal for Lowry. I just wonder, does Lowry really give them that much of an edge over Dragic? I think Lowry obviously is a better player, but in terms of cost, in terms of money, you are locked in for that Butler core. That's what you're locked in for. You're locked into Jimmy Butler for the next 5 years. I don't know if it's worth it. That's my opinion.
I mean,
Lowry or the Robinson?
Well, I think Robinson's a good ad, and you can't let your young pieces go. And I think he's a good piece. So unless you were going to get something of equal value back, which is probably not going to happen, it makes all the sense in the world to keep Robinson. I just think the fact that you went out and you traded away assets to go ahead and get Lowry in a sign and trade, and you extended Butler, you're locking in yourself to that duo of Butler and Lowry, hoping to try and win a championship when both of them are over the age of 31. That's a lot.
By the way, some NBA superstars age very gracefully, but you're betting on two doing that. You're betting on two guys aging the way you want them to. That's a little much. I think that if the Heat are going to do something, they're going to do it next year. Their lineup next season, very, very good. I still don't think it's enough to get them over the hump, but when you're able to throw out Butler and Lowry and their playmaking ability, their ability to do things with the ball with a shooter like Duncan Robinson, Bam Adebayo defensively, that's a good lineup. But it's very difficult to imagine they're going to go very far in the playoffs.
I will say, I think the success of their team for the next few years depends immensely on the development of Tyler Hero. And that's it makes me sound stupid because I know, Celtics fans hate Tyler Hero, but if he can develop into the player he showed he can be, that's I'm not saying he's going to be an all-star, but that's another close to 18, 20 point per game scorer they could potentially develop.
Well,
right?
yeah. Even if he
develops.
only ends up being like a 15 point per game scorer or 14,
Exactly.
whatever it is,
that's all
like
you
if
need.
you have him and then like you can play a tremendously versatile, great shooting small ball lineup with like Lowry, Hero, Robinson, Butler, and Adebayo. That's very interesting.
Doug McDermott just went to the Spurs.
Ooh, interesting.
For 3 years, $42 million.
And I do want. Wow, that is a lot. For, people love Doug McDermott. $14 million a year for Doug McDermott. That is insane. I do want.
He's also a bucket.
I do want to mention Justin's comment because we've had it up for a while. Adam Himmelsbach saying Fournier is unlikely, and Caesar looking at Otto Porter and or Patty Mills. Tim, you had a thought on that?
Yeah, no, this was Sam had shared this in our group chat. But apparently, due to all the rumors today, it's also worth mentioning Isaiah Thomas reunion is looking unlikely. And just based on everything else we've heard, it sounds like it's going to be improvements around the margins. Also, Celtics could be priced out of Jeff Green. Celtics remain focused on maintaining cap flexibility. But yeah, the last thing on here, besides the stuff we've already talked about, Marcus Smart's not going anywhere. Isaiah Thomas' return is not in the cards.
Yeah. The Isaiah Thomas stuff obviously floated out today.
Chris
by
Paul
Mark
just
Stein.
signed.
Chris Paul, we have the final numbers on Chris Paul. They're just that he.
God.
Wow, 4 years, 120 for Chris Paul. So Tim, you were talking about 3 years and 90. And we were thinking $30 million a year. This, by the way, to me, I will say right off the bat, makes way more sense for Chris Paul from Chris Paul opting out because to me, if you're Chris Paul, I meant then the 3 and 90 because if you're Chris Paul, like opting out of 1 and 44 to sign a 3 and 90 deal, like if I opted out next season instead, could I get 2 and what would it be 2 and 46? Like I think that would be pretty easy for Paul to get. So to me, that it never really made sense for him to opt out right now, that $44 million. But 4 for 120, you opt out of $44 million for 4 and 120.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That is a stupid amount of money.
Yeah.
It could be worth as much as 120. I think that's a big caveat. I think there's probably some incentives in there. Go on, Sam.
Yeah, the tweet says like he'll be making that when he's 40. And he's a small guard. We'll see how he holds up at 40. Will that be good for Phoenix? Who knows? I thought he might be leaving when I saw he opted out, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that seemed like, because I've already said, why would you ever opt out of, why would you ever opt out of $44 million? This is why. By the way, someone just mentioned a good point. This triggers the over 38 rule, which is something I think Chris Paul was a proponent of at the time. Any contract for a player who is 38 years or older, that covers 4 or more seasons where a player is 38 years old or will turn 38 years old during the contract term. These contracts are relevant and they have unique salary cap implications. So I can't remember exactly what it is now. I know there's an interesting stipulation with it, but it is funny because people had mentioned this before that eventually this was going to be something that Chris Paul eventually ran into after making it a rule for himself. But that's another interesting note to this, since Chris Paul is such a big part of the NBA PA and making stuff like this happen. I'll see if I can find it real quick. I'm still searching for it. It says it takes. It's interesting because I think it was part of like the 3 and 4 year deal, the ability to even offer players that are that age over like a 3-year deal. So it's interesting. I want to figure out exactly what it is. At its most basic, the over 38 rule takes out the incentive. Teams offer 4 or 5 years deals to a player of a certain age. While not as clear cut as an agreement, the over 38 rule focuses on a way teams could circumvent the league's soft cap structure with older players. The rule attempts to eliminate a way to pay an older player less in the near term to overpay him after they are a viable contributor, presumably to fit into a finite amount of salary cap space or an exception, like a mid-level exception. So there's a lot of convoluted stuff, but basically there's more to this Chris Paul deal than maybe meets the eye.
I mean, there has to be caveats,
too much
right?
Money.
It's so much
money.
There has to be caveats to it. There has to be some kind of incentive, like not even incentive, but like I don't know what else they could have done. That just seems like so much money. That's a full-on max contract for paying him 40. Oh my god, like I can't even at age 40 you're paying him that much.
So
Jesus.
Tim, let me ask you, if you were the Suns, would you have done it?
Well, they're caught in between a rock and a hard place, right?
Right, that's what we talked about. Yeah, but so if faced with the situation, you're Phoenix, you're the GM, do you do it? Do you give Chris Paul the money he's asking for?
Fourth year has to be a team option. That would be my caveat. If it has to be 4 years, that's insane. Even 3 years, I was like, that is 3 years, 90 mil was like a lot for me. And I understand like they can't afford to take a step back, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, well, like you said, KJ, you're depending on interior developments. So you're expecting on your young guys like Bridges, DeAndre Ayton to take those steps forward. And there are other young pieces that they have there, but like, you know, like how much can you improve? And cap strapping yourself to a guy who is never been the playoff guy. Like we've seen him perform well during this run, but like this was like the best playoff performance we've seen out of Chris Paul ever. This was the closest he's ever come. Like this was lightning in a bottle for Phoenix. Like I don't know if they can repeat this again. Like this was special. This was a special run and it fell short. So like how much better does it get like long term?
Yeah, and just to clarify on that rule, the over 38 rule actually enabled Phoenix to offer that fourth year. No other team could have offered Chris Paul a fourth year because of that rule. So that was probably one of the things that helped them in their negotiations and eventually kept Chris Paul in Phoenix. I generally agree with you, Tim. I think the only way they're going to be able to continue this is if they're able to have that internal progression from guys like Ayton, from guys like Mikal Bridges. And I think another thing to think about as well would be that, the Suns, who are they going up against in the West? Because this year, a lot of the teams in the West fell off. Steph Curry and the Warriors are getting older. LeBron and the Lakers, they just traded for Russell Westbrook, but I don't know that a lot of us have a ton of faith in that combination working. So the West, as crazy as it sounds, for at least the really good teams in the West, it's still kind of wide open, and I expect it to be kind of wide open and up for grabs next season with, a number of those teams at the top, whether you're talking about the Jazz, the Nuggets, depending on when Jamal Murray gets back, and the Suns in there, that mix as well. The Clippers, depending on if Kawhi Leonard gets back, which he might not, especially, those injuries really affect things too, especially if you're looking at next season for Phoenix. The fact that Jamal Murray, Kawhi Leonard might be out. Yeah, the Warriors coming back together, but we don't know how good they're going to be. They haven't played all together in quite some time now. So it's all very interesting in the Western Conference. It's a very interesting situation. As much as we kind of have looked at the West as this almost unreachable task when the Warriors were dominant for years. Unreachable if you want to compete in the West, you have to compete with some superpower. I don't think it's very much like that anymore.
The Warriors are going to be decent again.
Yeah, they'll be decent, but will they be dominant? Will they be the number one team? Will they be impossible to knock off? Or will it be kind of wide open amongst all those teams?
No, it's definitely wide open, but they're not going to be worse than they were last year. They're going to be better.
Right, no, absolutely. I totally agree with you. My point is just that, if you're Phoenix, I don't think that you view this the same way that maybe some other teams viewed what it was like to go up against the Warriors, whereas you heard some teams say, well, you're better off just not even trying and putting it off a few years and competing once their run is over. So I think that more than Phoenix has as good of a chance as any team to rise up and go to the finals next year. It is going to be very difficult, though. I wouldn't peg them as the favorite.
I think the path gets more difficult. I think just the fact that the Warriors are going to be healthy, and like regardless of what you think of the Lakers, like they also had their health issues. There were so many teams that had health problems, and at the end of the day, so did the Suns. I mean, losing what they did like so late on, like losing Saric, that actually was like a serious blow to their rotations. And apparently Chris Paul was playing with some kind of wrist injury. All I know is he got surgery. I don't know how severe, but it really does come down to health. I don't know. I think the West is going to be more difficult next year. That's my opinion.
So I want to talk about this, the players that people are talking about in relation to the Celtics, because I have a thought about Otto Porter. I would actually love Otto Porter. I think that Otto Porter is a guy that's been underrated for a while because people looked at the contract he was making. And don't get me wrong, he was underrated, but he was overpaid. Otto Porter got paid way too much money. but I think that has led people to think he's this terrible player. He's really not. He's still very versatile. He could play the 3 or the 4 for you. He's still a good rebounder, a really good 3-point shooter. Like, you look at his 3-point percentage on the Wizards from like a while ago. He was that's what earned him that contract. He was an absolute sniper, especially from the corner. So I know that Brad Stevens would love putting that into his lineup and putting that in his rotation. So to me, if you can get Otto Porter for a reasonable contract, you absolutely do that. For me, I know that you have this ranking here of, and I feel like this is almost in Avery Bradley 1, Otto Porter 2, Patty Mills 3 is a little bit of an interesting ranking. But personally, I would have Otto Porter number 1 with a bullet out of all those guys if I had to bring in. I understand you got to worry about that point guard situation, but to me, Otto Porter is the best of those 3.
I think he was asking us to rank it. Like, I don't know if that's his. That might have just
I didn't. Maybe
he's asking us to rank it. I would probably.
Yeah.
It's tough. Tim. Like, I
think it depends on Chris Dunn. I think if Chris Dunn is not with the team, I'd probably put certain players higher than others. But overall, I'd still think
Porter,
because
Mills,
if you don't
Bradley.
have Chris Dunn, because if you don't have Chris Dunn, then I don't see how you can't put the guards first. Because like, as much as you're like, oh, what about Smart and Pritchard? That's not how
you need more guards.
You need more than 2 guards on the team. But I do really like Otto Porter for the Celtics. So I do think they also need wing depth. And at the same time, you can say, what about Nesmith and Romeo? I'm like, okay, but first of all, Nesmith showed flashes. Yes, for half the season, he was great, and I believe in him. Romeo showed flashes even less than Nesmith. So if you have the chance to bring in Porter, who has shown that he can be a quality shooter and player, I think you got to do it.
Yeah, and by the way, real quick, I want to mention Sam. But when Otto Porter was playing with elite shooting in other elite players, when obviously John Wall was healthy and Bradley Beal was there in Washington, his 3-point percentage 43.4% in 2016-17 and 44.1% in 2017-18. Like, and when he went to Chicago, those numbers fell off, but he wasn't playing in as good of a team and as good of an offense. So. And of course, he goes away once they get Vucevic, and even then they weren't. It's not like he was playing around. Great. The Chicago wasn't great with Vucevic and Levine anyway. So, but I think if you bring Otto Porter in with other talent around him, so he doesn't need to be a key piece, and he's going to find open spaces. Like, he's going to be a great shooter for you.
Yeah, I was actually going to say exactly what you said. I just didn't have the stat of the percentage. But yeah, he was at his best when he was on a competitive team. When he was on the Wizards and they played the Celtics in the second round, that's when he was playing his best ball. When they were making playoff runs, he was playing great. He was underperforming on teams that were just not great. If he's on a team that's supposed to be competitive, like the Celtics, you nailed it on the head, KJ, he'll probably be able to have a little bit more of an impact.
And Tim, I saw this was a tweet that you shared that you wanted to point out. Brian Robb of Mass Live and formerly at Boston Sports Journal, saying that other Evan Fournier suitors besides the Celtics, who seem like a long shot at this point, and the Knicks, who have been talked about a lot, the Spurs and the Pelicans, which are 2 names I hadn't heard yet. We'd heard Mavericks. Mavericks isn't listed on there. Apparently the Mavericks' pursuit of him may have gone by the wayside. But Spurs and Pelicans are 2 interesting teams that Fournier could potentially end up with.
I don't see him going to anywhere but the Knicks or the Celtics, at least on that list. Well, it depends what his priorities are. Because if he goes to New Orleans, he's not going to win. If he goes to San Antonio, he's absolutely not going to win. The Knicks, I think they're not going to have as good of a season as they had last year. I mean, if he wants to compete, the Celtics are his best option. But if he wants to get paid, he can go to any of those places. New Orleans is going to be throwing money around because no one is going to want to play there. I thought they were going to have a chance at Lowry.
I think they have the chance to be good, though. I think if they sign Evan Fournier, they could be a playoff team. I think they could very easily.
They could be a playoff team.
The Pels?
Yes.
They are missing way too much. Like we just talked about earlier. They moved Lonzo Ball for Sadaransky. And
I said if they get Fournier. I said
if you have Fournier, Ingram, and Zion, like and especially like I know.
I think they could do it.
Right, and just those 2. Next to Zion, we've seen some great players drag terrible teams.
I'm not saying they'd be like a top 5. I think they could sneak into
when you have Zion Williamson, the way he's playing, the historic numbers he's putting up, like you can get there.
It's the West, okay? It's the West, and they've had the chance before. Like, look, I think Zion's a great player, but like the fact is they just lost Lonzo Ball for what we called like not a good enough package for him. Like you haven't replaced that talent yet. And going ahead and like signing Evan Fournier, that's great. Evan Fournier is a great piece, but he is a really great complementary piece. Like he is the ideal bench scorer. He is the ideal sixth man. He is not a guy who's going to come in and magically change your non-playoff team to a playoff team. That doesn't happen. Like you talked about before, it comes from interior development, and I haven't seen enough from that from the Pelicans.
I just think when you have three players like that, and we mentioned Fournier potentially is the Celtics' third scoring option next season. So when you have Zion as your number one, Ingram as your number two, and Evan Fournier is your number three, I want to see what Willie Green can do there. Obviously, they have a new coach there. We'll see how good he is, whether or not he can help them out a little bit. And I think that, the West is still – look, it's very difficult to make the playoffs in the West. I'm not going to doubt that at all. But we've seen teams surprise us in the West in years past, and I know that we all know very well how – and I know they didn't quite make the playoffs that year, but how we all thought
the Kyle Lowry deal numbers just came in. Sorry to
Is it bad?
I'll
bad is 90.
But I know that we all saw the year the Celtics had the Kings pick. The Kings were better than expected despite being in the West. I know they didn't quite make the playoffs. But the Grizzlies have surprised us in recent years when they had Ja Morant. And look, I think we all think right now if we were to just pick one player for, to be the centerpiece you're building around, you'd probably pick Zion over Ja Morant still. So
I don't think that's true at all.
So
I disagree.
I don't know about
I
that.
disagree with that. Go ahead and pull.
Wait, what happened?
You can go ahead while I talk to you about this. Go ahead and pull up Zion's played games. Let's go ahead and look at his health right now. While we're talking about him being a centerpiece, I have no doubt that he's a solid player. But the amount of games that he's actually played for the Pelicans is sickening.
So last season, Zion played 61 of the 72 game schedule.
How many games did he play the year before?
So his rookie season he didn't play, but that's 2 season sample size. Last season he played a lot.
So hang on, he didn't play at all. He didn't play at all his rookie season.
He played 24 games his rookie season. Yes.
Okay.
But guess what? I mean, look, you can't base it all off his rookie season, Tim. That's like, and
by
the way,
a
lot of that from the Pelicans was very, very precautionary because they knew they weren't going to be good. It wasn't because he couldn't go out on the floor. It was because they had their own internal concerns about his
this was the same guy this was the same guy whose family was like, we want out of New Orleans. Like they were rumored to be unhappy in New Orleans. Like,
what does that have to do with whether they're going to be good or not next season?
It depends solely on him and on him bringing on him being healthy.
His attitude might not be there. He might not have the drive to compete.
I mean, look,
he's not going to be 100% there in his mind.
Hold on. Zion Williamson, no matter what he does, is stuck in New Orleans for at least another 3 seasons. So you expect me to believe that Zion Williamson is going to pack it in for those 3 years just because he doesn't want to be there? I think that last season we saw him play at such an incredible level. Like, he averaged 27 a game last season at 20 years old. Like, he put up numbers that only Shaq had put up at his age. Like, that's the comparison people were putting up there. So I think I would still easily take Zion over Ja Morant.
I don't know about that, but I do still think that they can realistically, maybe playoffs was so high, but I think the Pelicans can be a play-in team easily next year, especially if they get Evan Fournier. And so I know
the play-in helps them. Go on, sorry.
Yes, such a minor move, but having Valanciunas instead of Adams at center is going to help so much more than people actually realize. Because last season,
and by the way, Jack, if I can just say, free agency isn't done yet. They could still get another point guard too.
Yes. So, right, because realistically, having Steven Adams and Eric Bledsoe next to Zion Williamson is probably the worst combination of players you could possibly think of to put next to a guy like Zion Williamson, right? Like, how much worse can you put next to a guy who doesn't shoot and needs open lanes than putting Eric Bledsoe and Steven Adams next to him? Like, that made no sense. So, right now, adding Steve Clifford Van Gundy on top of that, who is just probably the worst coach you could put next to a young core. I don't know. Go ahead, KJ.
Well, I was just going to – so, Jack, you are also on this boat that you would not take Zion over Ja Morant.
It's too close because I think at their peak, Zion can probably be better from what I've seen so far.
Just at their peak, you're saying just probably?
Yeah, probably. Because
I mean, I would say definitely at their peak. Like, if you want to throw in –
I don't agree with that. Well, my thing is one has made the playoffs and one is not. I know that's just right now.
one has made an all-star team and one is not. And you just talked about how terribly run the Pelicans are. So why is that his fault? I mean, the numbers he put up last season at 20 years old are mind-boggling, unbelievable. Like if you want to give credit to, like, if you want to give credence to injuries and stuff like that, and just durability, and if you like, obviously Ja gets the playmaking edge a little bit, but I don't think there's any world in which I would take John Morant over Zion Williamson right now at this point. Like, if you're offering me today, I have to take Zion because he's just been so dominant in the paint. I mean, his field goal percentage last season was 61% at his age, like 27 points per game on 61% shooting. It's he's a freak of nature. Like, if he can't stay healthy, he can't stay healthy. But last season, he did a pretty good job of it. Again, in his rookie season, he wasn't really hurt. It was just a precautionary thing from the Pelicans, more so than anything. I think he might have had a surgery like early on in the season, but I think it was a precautionary surgery. So, to me, like, Zion is the one of the. If I had to pick anyone under 22 years old, it's like Luka, whatever Luka's age right now, and then I have a hard time picking anyone else over Zion.
I think it's kind of a prove it. You can put
the Mavericks.
You can put up all the stats you want, but like until they actually amount to anything, they don't matter. You can put up. We've seen so many great players put up stats on bad teams, and then when they finally get the opportunity to win and deliver, they can't.
Yeah, but like, who are you using as an example of that? Like,
there are so many players.
I know.
You want me to go through every single player? Josh Smith. You want me to go through? Do you want to go through DeMarcus Cousins? There are so many. I want you to name a few. Kevin Love. Right,
none of those. That my point was going to be that none of those players hold a candle to Zion's raw talent. None of them.
Raw talent's great until you actually are expected to do something.
But there are good stats, bad teams guys out there that Kevin Love on the Timberwolves, and Kevin Love was still pretty good with the Cavaliers. I'm not going to discount but Zion to me is a completely different animal. Like, if you put him on any other team besides the Pelicans right now, like if he was in the East, I have no question he would be a playoff team already. Like I have no doubts about it that he would already be in the playoffs. And by the way, hey, we can continue rooting for NBA expansion, and then maybe Zion will eventually end up in the East if they get Las Vegas and a Seattle team and they move him over at New Orleans over to the Eastern Conference. But I don't know. I have so much faith in Zion Williamson.
I agree, but I will also say it is a million times easier to build a good team around John Morant than it is to build around Zion Williamson.
I'll agree with that. Yeah, it is.
It's just he's such a specific player, right? Like, he has the talent of a center in the body of a small forward, which is great until you have to run him at center. Because defensively, he's not bad, but he's not he's a dominant offensive player, right? He's like Giannis. He has the potential to be Giannis level dominant, except there's a 5-inch height difference there that doesn't allow him to guard the paint, and he's not an all defensive type player. So, like you said, the raw athleticism, the raw potential, that's all there. But it's just you have to build the perfect team around him.
Well, Jack, I'll say this because you are right. You do have to build. I think, but the ceiling is way higher. You have to build a specific way with Zion, but the ceiling is way higher. And the important thing in the NBA is always the ceiling of your team. So, around Zion.
But the ceiling is only higher if you build that team.
Right, but by the way, Giannis, you're right. Giannis can do a little more things as a big than
a little
Zion can. But
a lot,
yes,
a lot more.
Right. But Jack, you need the same type of center next to Zion. The Bucks need the Brook Lopez type who can defend the rim and stretch to three because they need
I don't. You can play Giannis at center. You can play Giannis at center. You can't.
Right, they can. But what I'm explaining is that. Yes, I'm not discounting the differences. I'm not discounting the differences in their games at all. But what I'm saying is when you do need to still have a center next to both of those players, and you need a specific type of center next to both of those players. The Bucks need a center that can shoot next to Giannis, and a center that can defend the rim a little bit in Brook Lopez. The center that can shoot with Bobby Portis or Brook Lopez. Both of those guys can do it. And that's what you need next to Zion. You need someone that can shoot and defend the rim. Is Valanciunas that? He's a little bit more that. I don't know. He's not, the greatest rim protector, but he's obviously can do the job a little bit. And I personally think, yes, that you definitely need that. That aspect of building the team is more difficult. But other than the center position, it it's not too much more difficult than that. You need shooters.
Yes, it is. You need shooters everywhere.
Hang on, I want to add a different. I want to add a different voice.
I need to go for a second, Tim.
I was going to say, let's ask Sam what he thinks. All right,
hold on. I just want to throw in that.
Dude, I do not care. It's not the Celtics. I don't have a good opinion for it.
Yeah, okay. You need shooters around them, yes, but you need shooters at the 1, 2, and 3 and at almost every team. Like besides unless you have a star player that just can't shoot, which is the case with Zion. In the NBA now, you pretty much need shooters at those positions anyway, no matter what. So to me, that's not that much of a give or an ask or anything like that. And there's so many great shooters around the NBA nowadays. Like it's not too difficult to build that team if you want to build it around Zion. It's not like an impossible task.
That's why I said I think they could compete for the playoffs next year. I think they could be a playoff team next year.
Yeah, and by the way, that's part of the reason. Lonzo was a pretty good shooter last season, so I don't want to give too much credit to this, but maybe that's why part of the reason why they wanted to move off from him.
Jeff Green has agreed to a 2-year, $10 million deal with the Nuggets.
Oh wow, the Nuggets going away from the Brooklyn Nets.
That's annoying.
Why is that annoying, Jack?
He's a target off the board.
Yeah.
Did you want him?
I mean, not that the Celtics. I mean, obviously, but not that they had the things for it. It's more annoying because that just makes the Nuggets even better, and I really think the Nuggets are going to be good.
So I actually was just happy.
I'm fine with them being good. They'll play the Lakers.
I like the Nuggets.
Let them be good.
Yeah,
I'm
fine with the Nuggets being good. I'm just happy about it that it gets Jeff Green away from the Nets, who supposedly wanted to keep him, and I assume they could have kept him for that number. So that's a little interesting that he is going away from them, but. Anyway, well, I'll wrap it up just by saying that maybe that's why the Pelicans wanted to move off of Lonzo. But right now, like they're already starting to build a team that they need around Zion. And if you want to compare it to what the Bucks have, like Middleton is there. If Middleton is there, Brandon Ingram can be their Chris Middleton. Valanciunas can be their Brook Lopez. And now it'd just be nice if they had someone like Drew Holiday. It'd be nice if they had someone like that.
David Nwaba just signed a 3-year, $15 million deal.
In case anyone was wondering what David Nwaba is doing.
Yeah,
with the Houston Rockets, to stay with the Houston Rockets.
Hold on. All right, let's not talk about that. Marcus Smart via Mark Murphy. He's seeking a max extension, approximately 4 years, $80 million, the same money the team doesn't want to pay Fournier, and still faces a tough negotiation.
I'm sorry, guys. If that's his number, bye. I
don't know if they can pay him that.
He's got, dude.
Listen,
he's going.
I don't know.
I
don't know if I'd pay Marcus Smart that, but I don't think that's an unreasonable ask for Marcus Smart.
No, but I don't think the Celtics should.
I don't think he's worth $20 million. Are you kidding me?
I think that's. I mean, right now he's getting his last contract was worth about his last contract was like $4.60 or whatever it was, or $5.60, and with the way the salary cap goes up and the way he progresses as a player, like this is to me about what his value should be.
No.
I think it could be like I don't think that's completely unreasonable. I think a team will pay him that as well.
I think a team will pay him that. I don't think Boston should.
I agree.
I agree. I think that if there's a number that from the team standpoint, you would hope it'd be closer to 17, 18. But I think that 20's not a far show from that.
For me, I think 18 is the very max, and I think around 15 is where I might start to consider not being worth it.
That's a lot of money.
The Celtics are in such a tough spot with money and all the different cap and hard cap and all this. It's so hard to commit that much money to him over 4 years if you might want to plan for something else. And that's the big problem I have with Fournier. I mean, it's a tough spot they're in, man.
Yeah, let me put it like this: Doug McDermott makes $14 million a year. How much is Marcus Smart worth? Like that's why it gets difficult, right? Yeah, that's why it gets difficult at a certain point to be like, what's this guy worth? Because everybody's making a ton of money, and these players hit free agency and they get overpaid. So
exactly. So that's the motive: is the players hit free agency and they get overpaid. Yeah. So why are you going to overpay to keep Marcus Smart? Like, I understand like the natural progression of contracts and earning more money. What has Marcus Smart done over his past contract to earn that kind of money, to earn $20 million a year?
The defensive stuff he's done, all defensive teams.
He's done his entire Has he's made second all defensive team in his past contract once, right?
And his rookie deal? Did he make the all defense during his rookie deal? But
I'm talking about his
way,
recent extension because he got an extension. You got a new deal in between his rookie deal and now. This would be his third contract with the Celtics.
Right. This would be and he made a couple all defensive teams in that time.
Okay,
he did.
So I would
And what was his 3-point shooting last year?
It wasn't very good, but that's not
not great.
Okay.
Okay, but Ben
but in
Simmons
his defense,
contract and can't shoot 3 points,
and he can't be traded. He can't be traded, KJ. They can't get rid of him fast enough.
But what I'm saying is 3-point shooting isn't the end all be all. It's also about the other things on the court.
If your argument is that Ben Simmons is getting a max contract, KJ, that does not make sense in this argument. So just go ahead and get rid of it because it doesn't make sense in this threat. It does not compute.
I mean, Ben Simmons. Okay, then how about let's forget Ben Simmons is makes a max contract. Ben Simmons is an all-star. Ben Simmons was voted an all-star by everybody around the league who votes by the media around the league. Ben Simmons is a really, really good player. He is, and he had a bad playoffs. He had a bad run, but Ben Simmons is agreed upon by the consensus before last year's playoffs. A very, very good player, but he can't shoot because there are other things you do in a game that matter besides shooting, and you deserve to get paid for those things, even if you're a guy that can't shoot.
Then why is no one trading for him?
Because
I got next.
Obviously there's other things that matter too in the NBA. I mean, yes, if you want me to say Ben Simmons is overpaid, yes, he's overpaid, but that doesn't mean he doesn't deserve to get paid a significant amount of money. And I think that a lot of people are looking at, and why isn't anyone trading for him, Tim? Because the Philadelphia 76ers are asking everybody to move heaven and earth for him. Like, I don't think Ben Simmons is worth what the Sixers are asking, but I still think he's a really, really good player. And I think there are a number of teams that would line up to trade for him if the Sixers brought their price down to something a little more reasonable.
Yeah, so with Simmons and Smart, they're almost like opposites. Like Smart is Bizarro Simmons, except for not with the shooting. But in the regular season, like you said, Simmons, all-star. People voted him around the league. No problem. Playoffs doesn't have a great run. Smart, typically inconsistent throughout the season. But where is the last time you can pinpoint him having a bad playoffs? He was great this playoffs. He was the second best player on the Celtics. Last season, he's consistent when it matters.
I think generally
this
in the
season was 5 games. It was 5 games against the team that last season no chance against.
He was fantastic and got them past Toronto with Tatum.
That's because you're remembering the good moments. I guarantee you, there's some games in there. He's just so streaky.
Throughout that whole series, he was fantastic. He had a triple-double in Game 6,
and he had the block in Game 7. And by the way,
this is the thing. Play when it matters.
Yeah, this is the thing I'll say about Marcus Smart is that there are other things that you can do, and everybody's so obsessed with offense nowadays. It's so obsessed with shooting, and it's a big part of the game. Don't get me wrong, but that doesn't mean that you don't deserve to get paid if you don't have that skill at an elite level. Marcus Smart is still a great passer. He's a great defender, and when he does drive to the hoop, he's proven to be at least better at that than he's shooting 48% from 2-point range. That's for a point guard, for a guard in the NBA. That's about average. That's what you'd expect from a guard in the NBA. So his 3-point shooting isn't there, but his free throw shooting isn't what Simmons is. It's, he's a pretty decent free throw shooter too. So I think that if you're looking for a contract for Mark Smart, what he's worth, you look at some of the other great defenders around the league, they get paid a lot of money because defense still matters too. So I still think that if you're Marcus Smart and you're trying to go into free agency, there's no reason why you shouldn't be expecting $20 million.
So let's go ahead and look at the stats. For this past season, he shot 39.8% from the field, 33% from 3, 48.2% on 2-pointers, and he had an efficient field goal percentage of 48.9, and he was shooting 79% from the free throw line.
And
you're going to pay that $20 million a year.
Yes. If I'm another NBA team, I absolutely
do you know how many 3-pointers he took per game?
Why are you Tim? I told you he's not a good 3-point shooter. Why you bring up 3?
He took 6. Okay.
Tim, I just told you why you still deserve, if you have other skills, to be paid in the NBA. 3-point shooting isn't everything. And you continue to bring up 3-point shooting. Do I know how many 3-pointers he took, Tim? No, off the top of my head, I don't know how many 3-pointers Marcus Smart took. Guess what? It doesn't matter.
It does, though, because, do you know how many Evan Fournier took? They took the same amount of 3-pointer attempts a game.
All right.
Well,
I want to say this.
Fair,
I want to say
Fournier
this.
was just as inconsistent. Go ahead, Jack.
I want to say this.
Yeah, disagree with that.
Marcus
COVID
Smart
had a factor, but he was inconsistent as well.
Yeah, but he brought it back around. But I understand what you're saying. At the start, he was tough. I think that it's very. I think Marcus Smart will get paid around $18-20 million by a team that needs his specific skill set. And if you take away the fact that he's been so important to the Celtics for so long, I think that the Celtics don't need that specific skill set as much, right? Like, obviously, Marcus Smart and the Celtics, peanut butter and jelly, they go together, right? He's so important to the city. He's so important to the culture. He's the leader. He's this. But if you put it in perspective of just, he's a great defender, not a very consistent shooter at all. He comes up in great moments in the playoffs, yes, Sam, but he's still not an efficient shooter in the playoffs, right? He'll have those big games. He'll have those big games like when he made 2 clutch threes against Raptors, but he still shoots 33% as a whole, right? And that's tough. That's tough. So I just think for this specific Celtics team, when both of their star players are really good defenders and they have solid defenders across the board, I think they should use that money elsewhere and try to sign shooting over defending, because they already have defense, when in reality they don't have a ton of role players that can shoot the ball super well. They can develop that in Peyton Pritchard and Aaron Nesmith, but if you're looking to spend $20 million, I just don't think Smart is the smartest, no pun intended, place to use it moving forward.
Yeah, and
I agree. I think you're right about that. It's tough for the Celtics to put that amount of money aside just for him, especially all the moves they're making right now. That everything. I think Keith Smith just put it out. I think I sent it to you guys. They're really gearing up for next offseason. That's what they want, right?
I hate that.
So it's very hard for the Fournier thing because do you really want to pay him for 4 years, like $80 million, whatever, or whatever they want or he wants? Same with Smart. So it's hard right now for me to commit to either of those guys, even though Marcus, I've said it on the podcast many times to Jack, I'd love to see his number retired if he wins a title with the Celtics. Like, I think he could be a career guy, but it might not be in the cards right now just because of all the money and the sticky situations they're in with the cap right now.
Yeah, and what I'll say is that, I, unlike Tim, actually think defense matters in the NBA, and I think that other teams around the NBA would also tend to agree with that. I mean, look at some of the other contracts around the league, okay? When Drew Holiday, he's a great player, great offensive player, much better than Marcus Smart, signed he had a great three-point shooting year last year. It was great from 3 last year. Wasn't bad at all. But when he signed his extension with the Pelicans years ago, Drew Holiday's three-point percentages before last year, he shot 33% in 2015-16, 33% in 2017-18, 32.5% in 2018-19, and yet the Pelicans still decided to come along and pay Drew Holiday 5 years, $126 million. The Warriors, Draymond Green can't shoot a lick. Draymond Green can't shoot at all. They signed him to a 4-year, $100 million extension.
KJ, they are two. KJ, those are two.
Green.
Those
John
are two.
Payne
For
Murray
what?
signed a
Okay.
contract extension, big money contract extension with the Spurs a few years ago. Why? Because they're all great defenders. They can't shoot, but it doesn't matter because defense matters too.
KJ, when did I ever say that defense didn't matter? No, I didn't say that defense doesn't matter. We're talking. Okay, KJ, if you go ahead and just take a second, KJ, go ahead and take a second so you can get some oxygen. Okay,
makes 4 years, $100 million.
Take a minute and get some oxygen.
Terrible offensively. Draymond Green can't shoot. He airballs floaters in big moments. Draymond Green is a terrible offensive player and gets clowned for it all the time, but he makes his money. Why? Because he's a great defender, and Marcus Smart deserves his money for the same reason.
No. I think he deserves some money, but I'm not going to go ahead and
can I chime in
on
quickly? I think yes, he deserves also Bobby Portis 2-year, $9 million back to the Bucks. Furkan Korkmaz 3 years, $15 million back to the Sixers. Anyways, I think defense obviously matters in the NBA. Obviously matters, but like I'm saying, I think with the Celtics, defense should not be the priority anymore. You look at a team like the Warriors, right? You talk about Draymond Green. Yeah, he got a bag. He got a big bag for what he does because he's a great defender. They also have the 2 greatest shooters of all time in their rotation, so it doesn't matter as much as that position. And that team just gels so well together, right? Drew Holiday got a huge bag in New Orleans, right? And we see how that works out. I'm not saying he's a bad player, and he's developed into a very, very good three-point shooter. Or that's a stretch. He's developed into a better three-point shooter than he was before. But the reason the Pelicans paid him was because they were trying to do everything possible to compete with Anthony Davis on that roster, right? And I think they were a good team, but they didn't win a championship, right? They got out of the first round one.
Jack, really quickly, wouldn't those players have also gotten contracts similar to the ones they've gotten with their existing teams if they hit free agency and gotten it somewhere else?
No, I think that's revisionist.
I think Marcus Smart will get $20 million.
No, but what I'm asking
if on
is
the right team, it will be a worthwhile contract. If on the right team, $20 million.
I'm not necessarily arguing him for the Celtics to do this, but what I'm asking is, like, if Draymond Green hit the open market, would he have not gotten what the Warriors paid him?
No.
You don't think so? You don't think another team?
Can't.
So then why would the Warriors
him the max contract? No.
So no. So no other team around the league would have given Draymond Green 4 and 100. Because then why would the Warriors have done it? Because
they can pay whatever they want to retain him and go over the salary cap.
But the Warriors could have just said, go out and hit the open market and we'll match whatever the best contract is. Like, you pay a player what he's worth. You play him what he'd be worth on the open market. Like, to me, if Draymond Green,
there was also a level of, you've helped win 3 championships here. We have a deep respect for you. We're going to give you this contract to stay and fit with this team.
I think there were a number of teams that would have lined up to pay Draymond Green.
And maybe they would, but at the same time, those teams probably would have had great shooters or very good scorers on the roster.
As I said, I'm not arguing for the Celtics to re-sign him. I am just arguing for Marcus Smart to be worth the money he's asking for.
I think he could be in the right situation.
It's not worth it for the Celtics to pay it. That's what it comes down to. It's not worth the Celtics to pay that much money. And, like, look, getting back to Smart specifically, I think he's greatest facilitator. It's one of his best abilities, and it's not something that they focus on enough. If they keep him here and he buys into that role, then it's a totally different conversation. But he's taking 6 threes a game and he's shooting 33%. That's not good enough. Well, for the amount of attempts. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No.
In fairness to him, he had to step up. Mind you, this year it might be similar, but because of all the injuries and because the guy is in and out of the lineup, he had different roles in a lot of different games. Like, sometimes they needed him to try and be a scorer. This year, I think, at least the way it's shaping up, the plan is not that. They want him to be a facilitator. When he's been asked to be a facilitator in the past, from what I remember, he does fine and he doesn't really.
Yeah, that's what you need from him.
He is Chuck, and I agree.
I don't think the plan has ever been that, in fairness. I'm not, and again, I love Marcus Smart. I think for the Celtics organization, I love Marcus Smart, but I don't think the plan has ever been for Marcus Smart to be a third scoring option, right? You see Kemba Walker be out every other game last season. That was tough. Gordon Hayward snaps his leg. That's tough. And Marcus Smart's got to step up. All these unlucky things happen, and Marcus Smart has to step up. And yes, his defense is amazing. And if he's in a role where he can be the 4th, 5th scoring option, be a primary ball handler, and just play that defense and hit a shot when he needs to, that's great. But right now, the way the roster is shaping up, and I know you're not saying this, Sam, like he's worth the money. I think the Celtics need to spend that $20 million elsewhere. And I think that it's the harsh reality.
I kind of agree with you. It sucks. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what their plan. I would just need to see what's going on at the time they're going to give him the deal.
I think it's Beal. I think it's Beal. Like, I like Smart. Okay, so look, the idea of paying for the intangibles, you can get intangibles for cheaper. That's all I'm saying. I think Marcus Smart is a great fit for this team in terms of what he provides for defense. I think he needs to buy into his role, and there needs to be a carved out role for him. When he works as a facilitator, that's when he's at his best. He was one of the best facilitators. He at one point, at least during last year, was leading the team in assists. So, like, that's what you need from him. When he's just doing that and he's buying into his role and he's buying into whatever shots he's got, perfect. When he tries to outplay that role, that's when you run into issues. And if that's what's going to happen, if you're going to continue to have this flip-flop back and forth, then I don't know if I would want to pay him $20 million a year. And for the Celtics, where they have to be building around the Jays, I don't know if holding on to Marcus Smart for that money makes the most sense for the team. And that's what it comes down to. It has nothing to do with liking Smart. I do like Smart. He's one of the most fun Celtics to watch. And like you guys said earlier, in that Toronto series, he came up big. There was also some nights where he didn't shoot as great as he could have. But again, it comes down to what you're asking him to do. And that comes down to coaching as well as roster building. So it'll be interesting to see how they go out. They need to do the right things to build out the team. If that includes Smart, great. If it doesn't, I understand if that's what the asking price is.
So
I agree with
I'll
this guy
say
in the chat before we go. You can go, but after that, we
The
should
Rob
bring up
guy.
Lisa.
Yeah.
this guy.
I
Rob.
agree with him and the guy below him.
Okay, yeah. The thing I'll say about Smart is that when he's at his best, he's one of the 5 or 6 best defenders in the league. I think I don't have any question about that at all. And I think that when it comes to $20 million per year, we look at it because the salary cap has been so inflated that we look at $20 million as this exorbitant amount of money, the money you pay star players. But the reality is the cap has gone up so much that star players are now getting 45, 40 million, 35, 30 million. And the guys who are getting 20 million, like if you look around at the salaries these guys are actually making, and it varies because obviously there are some players that sign when they're not quite stars yet at different levels. They turn into stars. Some players regress, what have you. But a lot of the players who are making around 20 are like, the Goran Dragic was making 19, who, he's a really good player, but just below an all-star. Bogdan Bogdanovic, 18 million. Capella, 18 million. Eric Gordon made 18 when he was up. Eric Bledsoe made 18. Terry Rozier, when he was up, made 18, and he got a lot better after that contract was signed. Bogdanovic with the Hawks makes 18.
I can read you the list if you want. I have a list.
I have it all in front of me. Ricky Rubio, 18. Okay. So to me, the 18 is where you pay the really high-end guy that isn't an all-star, but is that third, fourth guy on your team, and that's what it's kind of turned into in the NBA. Harrison Barnes is around that money too. Danilo Gallinari, who was a good comp since he just got paid as far as the tier of player you're looking at making that money. So to me, when 20 million gets thrown around, it feels like a lot of money. But when you're talking about a player in Marcus Smart, who's definitely a starting caliber player, one of the 5 or 6 best defenders in the league, like he's worth that to me. And when you look at the other players, it's kind of hard to compare them to Smart because a lot of them are good at other things too. Like, I would put, if I had to list those 6 guys off, to me, it's like Rudy Gobert, Giannis, Anthony Davis, Marcus Smart, Ben Simmons, and Kawhi Leonard. And those guys are, those guys are all in a different tier offensively, pretty much. Besides, you might say Gobert, but the things Gobert does are so much different from the things Smart does that it's hard to equate those. But like Gobert, he's a great lob threat offensively. He doesn't do much else, but he's still going to get an absolute bag because of the defender he is. So I really have very limited gripes about Marcus Smart coming out and saying I think I'm worth 20 million because I don't totally think he's wrong.
I will say most of, if not all of the other people you mentioned are all-stars. So yeah. I'm not saying that Marcus Smart, I think his value is around 15 to 18 personally. I don't think 20 is too much of a stretch, but most of the other people you mentioned for their great defense are all-star players.
Right, but all those other players are on max contracts. Every single one of those I mentioned. Yeah. So and Marcus Smart to me is not on their level offensively whatsoever, but defensively he is. And so this is going to be a silly way to phrase it. So if he doesn't have the offensive side, but he has the defensive half, I'll pay him half. I'll pay him half of what that 40 million is that those max guys are making. So, I don't have too much of a problem with it. I think he'll get it when he hits free agency. It depends on who has cap space and what other players he's going to be up against. But, those are the type of guys you're talking about. And even I know that someone we threw around as potentially being traded for Marcus Smart at times, like Aaron Gordon last year, he makes about 16.5, which is more than Smart makes right now. To me, and he signed that contract years ago. If he signed it, yesterday, it would have been 20 or over 20. So I think that starting level player, once again, that isn't quite going to ever be an all-star, isn't going to reach that level. That's what they're going for nowadays.
I think I cap out at 18. I think 15 to 18 is right around the market that I would pay him. And at
the end of the day, we're not talking about that much of a difference, especially, when it comes to the money the NBA makes.
It is, though. No, it is, though, because if you're trying to build around the 2 max contracts you have with Jason and Jalen, and you're talking about trying to pursue a guy like Bradley Beal, then, yeah, that money does make a difference.
To me, you can't pay Marcus Smart at all if you're trying to get Bradley Beal. It becomes something you have to. That becomes a pipe. By the way, this whole conversation for me hasn't been very much about the Celtics at all. It hasn't been about whether I think the Celtics should pay him, my view of it from the Celtics standpoint, how I think the Celtics should view it. I don't think the Celtics should necessarily view it this way. I'm just viewing it from the standpoint of simply, do I think Marcus Smart is worth that money for NBA team X? And I think that if I'm from Marcus Smart's perspective, that's what I would be asking for, certainly, and that's what I would think I'm worth.
Just depends how much it means to him to stay. If he wants to stay, he's going to have to take a cut, which he's already done once. And it's, not necessarily fair to ask him to do it again, even though the situation does call for him to do it again if he wants to win with the Celtics.
Yep.
I don't know if you want to. Sorry, go ahead, Tim.
I was going to say Zach Collins signed a 3-year, $22 million deal with the Spurs.
Ridiculous.
I know I sent a couple to them to you guys, but
it's only $7 million. It's not that
Zach
much.
Collins hasn't played in 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, he broke his foot again and then couldn't return.
You know what's funny about that, Jack? Literally, the picture of him that Bleacher Report tweeted out is him in like street clothes. Because he hasn't played in 2 years. So that's funny. But I will say, and Keith Smith agreed with you, Jack, saying I'm a little legit confused about the Zach Collins deal. I mean, great for Collins, but that's a lot of money. Well, the deal I did want to talk about that I was surprised about, and I don't know what you guys' thoughts on it were, was Bobby Portis, which was mentioned while we were talking about Marcus Smart. I thought that was a little bit lower than I thought Bobby was going to get. I thought when we saw him opt out, and after the run he just came off of, I thought Bobby was going to get at least the full mid-level or in the conversation of some full mid-levels. And, I mean, you talk about the Spurs paying Zach Collins that. Wouldn't you so much rather have had Bobby Portis for that money,
I think, I would have disagreed with it. I think it would have been a little high, but I thought teams were going to offer him like $10 million. And that, like I said, that's a little high, but I thought he was going to get those offers. I think they wanted to run it back, and I think Portis loves Milwaukee now. So I think that's why they do. And there is a player option on the second year, so he'll have an opportunity to get another bag if he wants to leave after next year. But it's definitely low.
Portis,
what is it? Yeah.
Winning mentality.
Yeah. I mean,
that is a player move.
Yeah, and it's a great deal for the Bucks, who I think really needed Bobby Portis back.
It allows them to use the full MLE, which is how they reported it. So that's huge for them.
It's great for them because the situation with Brook Lopez, obviously with him aging, Bobby Portis doesn't do a lot of the same things. But again, we mentioned earlier, we talked about a little, that stretch five next to Giannis, having that type of guy is really important. And Bobby Portis, a little undersized for the five, but and Justin Cobb mentioned in the chat talking about it. Definitely low for Portis. Agree with Jack. He must have wanted to stay. So it makes sense for the Bucks to do it. I'm surprised Bobby Portis wasn't able to capitalize more on his value, which it seemed like he might have had.
He turned down offers. I saw he did turn down offers from, I think, I know the Heat offered him a contract, and then somebody else offered him a deal. So he did clearly want to stay in Milwaukee.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I know there were a lot of free agency stuff dropped while we were talking. I don't know if we mentioned this one.
And Mavs. But, the Mavs offered him a deal. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know if we mentioned we talked about it much at all, but another one I wanted to talk about was Gary Trent Jr. going back to Toronto, 3 years, $54 million. That feels a little high too for Gary Trent Jr. Obviously, it was funny because the Raptors traded Norman Powell because they didn't want to have to pay him once his contract was up, and then they end up paying Gary Trent. I mean, roughly what you'd expect Norman Powell to make at the end of the day. So
I think
it's interesting.
They're probably banking on potential there because he's only 22. If I had to guess, that's the price you pay for youth in the NBA, which is like guys like I can't like Zach Collins getting $7 million. Yeah. Spurs are like, oh, maybe he'll turn into something. The same thing can be said like Gary Trent. I could see easily averaging 20 points, but at the same time, it'd be 20 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists. You know what I'm saying? He can score. He's not going to do much else. And if you're the Raptors, I guess that's what you want because you're building for the future with Scotty Barnes over Jalen Suggs. But
and I know that it's even more interesting because I suppose Gary Trent can play some guard for you, but you just mentioned they draft Scotty Barnes. They already have Anunoby. They already have Siakam, and they have Gary Trent. That forward group's getting pretty crowded. And don't get me wrong,
Gary
Trent's tons of players.
Really small. He's like 6'3".
Yeah, but obviously he played a lot of forward with Portland because they had McCollum and Lillard. Yes. But and maybe that'll be different with Toronto. We'll see. But even still, you can trade some of the players if you're Toronto too. But we'll see how they end up building their team. I know that you didn't like the Scotty Barnes pick, and now that we know Lowry is definitely gone, it makes it even more interesting. But maybe they just wanted to move on with Fred VanVleet as their point guard, and that's all it is at the end of the day.
Yeah, it'll be.
Well, I don't think the Raptors should have paid Lowry that much money in the situation they're in. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's just a matter of, I think, Sam, whether or not they should have drafted Jalen Suggs knowing he was walking out.
I understand that part of it for sure.
Yeah, you'd think so, right? You'd think they'd take one of the, anyways, we don't have to get back into that.
Well, I want to hear Sam's say, because Sam, I think the idea of playing Van Fleet at point guard, something that they obviously have done when Lowry's been out or Lowry's been off the floor at times, and something Van Fleet maybe more naturally positioned to do, especially with his size. But he's played shooting guard for so long now that, I don't understand if that was part of the thinking. I threw around, I know you guys, we talked about it before, of maybe they were doing that, anticipating working out a deal with the Sixers. I don't know, but the idea that you would not draft Jalen Suggs and go, who was great in college, led his team on a great run, and obviously, went on to go to Orlando. It's interesting that you would choose Scotty Barnes, who was rising up boards, but it seemed like you have Lowry going out the door, you almost have the perfect replacement in Suggs, and they just, I don't know, for whatever reason they decided to go in a different direction. It seems like no one can really understand it.
Listen, I feel like I got called on for a pop quiz. No, but Van Fleet has done it. He's played point a little bit when Lowry would be on the bench. He's filled in. He could do it. He's an NBA player. He's definitely equipped to do it.
He averaged 6 assists last season. He's a good passer.
He's capable, and he's getting paid, so he should be able to do it if he's getting paid, right?
Yeah.
I think their their ability as a team really hinges on the play of Van Vliet and Siakam, because Siakam had a really down season last year after being pretty good for 2 seasons before that. Pandemic P, shared nickname between him and Paul George, applied to him last year. So that's a problem. Scotty Barnes, for their sake, you got to hope he does well. They're just going to be getting roasted like they have been.
Yeah.
And obviously Woj just tweeting. I know you guys put it in the chat. Trevor Ariza going to the Lakers, going back to where he won his championship way back in the day. And, these are just some of the moves that the Lakers are going to have to make because of the way they've.
That's a good signing. Trevor Ariza was really good for Miami.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
and you're going to need.
You're going to need game against the Celtics.
Right, Ariza. He's obviously fallen off a little bit, especially what he was with the Rockets a few years ago when they were making their runs. Ariza's a good bench player at this point. I think that's the way that the Lakers, because of the way they position themselves, the moves they're going to have to make to surround their roster with talent. And as far as whether, we don't have the details yet. I know someone was asking whether it's going to be the minimum or the tax mid-level for Ariza. But as far as the level of players you're going to get, if you're the Heat, you're going to have, or if you're the Lakers rather, you're going to have to continue to hope that guys come along and are willing to take this, take these lower contracts, these elite level minimum guys, or now minimum guys if they end up paying the tax mid-level for Ariza, but those guys kind of fill out the rest of your roster because they really don't have any other options because they just stuff their roster with Westbrook, LeBron, and AD and hope everything else works out.
And I know none of you particularly care about the Heat, but that's tough for the Heat. They don't have a power forward now. They don't have any starting power forward power forwards on their roster. They don't have anybody who should be considered to be a starting power forward on the roster. So that's really bad. That's really bad.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyways,
Lakers are getting all their minimum guys. They're shooters now.
And
Wayne Ellington
just confirmed. Okay. Another. This is from Bobby Mark. San Antonio could still generate up to $30 million cap space, but they would need to release the holds of DeRozan, Mills, and Gay. I think that's kind of expected. If they let DeRozan go, obviously we heard about the Miami ties, so he might end up with the Heat to have that reunion with Lowry. Mills obviously has been tied to the Celtics, and Rudy Gay is obviously going to be sought after by a lot of playoff teams as well as contenders. I know that the Celtics were interested supposedly in him as well. The question is if San Antonio clears up that space, do they all of a sudden become a landing spot for a guy like Evan Fournier?
Yeah, and
if you're Fournier, why do you go there other than money?
That's got to be it. What's motivating you, right? It's got to be the money.
He's been on a bad team his whole career with Orlando. Why would he want to go back to mediocrity?
Well, and that's why I think it doesn't happen. But I have to mention the possibility. I don't think it'll happen, Sam. Don't get me wrong. I just figured it's worth mentioning.
And Jack, I know that you're worried about the Heat power forward situation, but don't worry. You can always re-sign Udonis Haslem. He's sitting right there for that.
That's right.
Yep.
But isn't Bjelica with the Miami Heat still, or is he not?
He's a free agent now, and there's been reports he's gotten deals from overseas, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think he'll be back in Miami. And if he is, there's still a possibility. But I'm getting this.
Personally, I kind of like the idea because the Heat have played.
Oh yeah.
The Heat have played Myers Leonard at times or Kelly Olynyk over the last handful of years next to Bam Adebayo. And it's been I have always felt like this team could be so much more interesting if they started to play smaller. And when they started doing it with Jay Crowder, that's when they went on their big run. So I know this is taking that to the extreme. But that lineup we talked about before, which they could roll out at times against certain teams, we'll see how often they're actually able to get away with it. But like Lowry, Hero, Robinson,
Butler,
Bam, and Jimmy Butler, like that lineup, offensively at least, is pretty dangerous. And just the athletes you're throwing on the floor, it's going to be tough to. Obviously you're going to have tough times defensively with Robinson and a little bit with Hero out there, but. You just hope that the way you're surrounding them with defenders, Lowry, great defender, Butler, great defender, Bam, great defender, that's enough. And I'm just interested to see that lineup on the floor. Like that's gonna be a fun lineup to watch play.
Yeah, I think it'd be good. I think the issue with Bjelica, or less so issue, more so confusing thing, is they didn't even play him a lot last year when they acquired him. He kind of was just a throwaway player, and he didn't really see the floor much. I think the Robinson did play a little bit of power forward last season. It, like you said, it's a struggle defensively, but when you have Butler and Adebayo, you can usually cover up those defensive holes. And Lowry now.
Yeah, and before they had Dragic, or none at times, and those guys.
And now they have Lowry.
Right, and so those guys at times, you would look at them and say, well, when you have kind of 2+ defenders on the floor and 3- defenders on the floor, that's an issue. You now flip that with Lowry out there. So we'll see. The Heat are going to be a very interesting team to watch this season. I know we're running up over the 2-hour mark, so I'm sure we should wrap things up soon. Although I'm sure all of us could just sit on here all night and just watch the Bleacher Report and the Woj tweets and the Chris Haynes tweets just flow in. But I'm also very interested to see, as we were kind of talking about before, just how the Lakers fill out their roster, because I don't love the idea of Westbrook, James, and AD together as a big three, but these two moves we just heard about, not a bad start.
Shooters.
Not a bad start at all.
They're getting some shooters.
If you just want to talk about that as a lineup, and Wayne Ellington and Trevor Ariza are no great shakes, but if you have Westbrook, Ellington, Ariza, James, and Davis as a lineup, that's pretty good. The only problem is Anthony Davis going to be okay playing center, which has been the question for his entire career pretty much.
You know what, I will say this as well. I think it's pretty crazy that we're almost 2 hours after the start of free agency and we still don't have any announcement on that Tristan Thompson deal. We've got nothing on it. I'm looking, I got nothing, which means one of two things. Either the deal died or they are tweaking it for something else.
I have to imagine they're waiting for a fourth team. I feel like they're waiting for a fourth team to take Chris Dunn and give them something back. I think that's probably, if I had to guess.
The question is who, right? Because it has to fit within that, or it has to fit within the TPE that you create from Tristan Thompson.
So, so why, Jack? Because we just talked about the whole thing. When we were talking about the Dunn deal earlier, and we were talking about the point guard situation, you were mentioning kind of I don't want to say that necessarily wanted Dunn, but the need for another point guard on the team.
Yeah, so, I'm not saying I wouldn't like Dunn on the Celtics. I think he'd be fine. I think you need I would prefer a little more shooting, but I think it's fine. I just know from the reports I've seen that they're trying to move off of Chris Dunn in order to keep up some cap space. So if I had to guess at why the deal isn't going through, it's because they're trying to facilitate it all in one transaction.
I see. So, and the idea would be that they wouldn't take back any salary in exchange for Tristan Thompson, maybe Bruno Fernando, but that would be it.
Yeah, either that or they find a 1-year deal, another guy that can come in. I know Chris Dunn is a 1-year deal, but someone that maybe fits a little better, brings a little more shooting.
Yeah, and I would assume the idea there is to move yourself cap-wise to still have the flexibility to bring in someone like Patty Mills, if that's someone you would rather have for the full mid-level or whatever it might be. But, yeah, I think I still, if I'm the Celtics, I understand from that standpoint, so maybe they are waiting for a few more dominoes to fall, and if they don't get the guy that they're holding out for or that they really want, then they'll just say, okay, fine, we'll take Dunn back, and that'll be the end of it, perhaps. Because to me, I don't think they can – I don't want to say afford, but I don't think that they should go back on this deal at this point. Like, I think no matter what machination of it is and no matter what form it takes, you pretty much have to just, let this deal go through, take your trade exception that you're going to get from Tristan Thompson, and
I agree.
Take Dunn on. And I don't think Dunn should be viewed as any sort of, like, albatross. Like, is he the perfect player for your team? Maybe not, but – to me, it's a guy that can still bring you a lot of good things, can still help your team. Yep. Obviously, if we talked about when they made the Dunn deal and when they made these other deals, putting a lot of defense on their team around Tatum and Brown, and Dunn obviously can do that as well. So I think that if it comes down to it, they just have to accept the fact that they're going to have Dunn on the team. And hey, it's a 1-year deal, so if you don't want to use him that much, you can always move off him at the end of the season. So it's not going to hamstring you long term, at least if you're forced to make the deal. But interesting that it would come out that it was so confirmed, or it seemed so confirmed at the time, if they were still trying to look for that fourth team to take on Dunn, because it seemed as if that was a later development, not like something that was happening in the moment. So it's fascinating to see that things are still held up here. And obviously, Tim, as you mentioned on Twitter, I know that the fact that they could have had Dunn absorbed into that Cantor trade exception, and they just decided that's not really what we care about in this situation.
Well, that speaks to, like, they're trying to do something else. They're trying to do something else.
Lakers as well.
Okay, that's not surprising. But thank you for letting us know. That's still it's still good to know. Dwight is returning to LA, where he finally won a championship. So
third stint.
Good for him, man. You know what? He was out of the league there for a little bit.
Very true.
So. I don't know if you guys saw it. Norman Powell doing the classic free agent / NBA drama. He's giving us the eye emojis, so I don't know what's happening there. But getting back to the Celtics stuff.
Watching everything.
Maybe. He hasn't gotten paid yet. Mm-hmm. He doesn't get paid. In terms of what the Celtics are doing, I think a lot of it's just waiting and seeing, but it is interesting that they let that TPE expire. I thought for sure they were going to use it. I was excited when they were going to absorb Dunn into it. But now that they aren't, makes me think that something else is going on, that they're trying to build towards something else. I won't pretend that I know what it's going to be. Yeah, Solomon Hill, 1-year deal back to the Atlanta Hawks.
I also feel like there's definitely going to be more trades this offseason because they have 13 guaranteed contracts right now. And if they want to add any of these players via TPE or free agency signing, I think Carson Edwards got to go. I think some of these guys at the bottom of the bench have to go. I think at the very least, if Carson Edwards on the roster at the start of next season, I'm not only going to be shocked, I'm going to be deeply upset. Like he's just he has to go for not only the Celtics' sake, but for his sake. Like it's just not working here.
It's not beneficial for either party.
Yeah, and you have to imagine that these talks we heard with the Mavericks going on. You have to imagine that the Celtics wanted the Mavericks to take on Carson Edwards, and the Mavericks said no because there were these reports that the Celtics were trying to get them to take on some money, and they couldn't quite figure it out, and so they eventually landed on Moses Brown, and the Celtics wanted them to take more money, and Dallas wanted to take less, and what have you. So you have to imagine the Celtics were like, please take Carson Edwards, and Dallas just wasn't interested. So that is just one signal that it's going to be difficult if the Celtics want to move off him to find a taker for his services at this point. I will say, as far as the Dwight Howard signing goes, again, another good kind of minimum contract to get for the Lakers. We'll see if they can throw Carmelo Anthony on there, and then all of a sudden, you probably got a handful of the best minimum free agents that you possibly could have gotten for your team. And so we'll see what ends up, all culminating there. Maybe they have to play Anthony the mid-level at the end of the day, but I know there was supposed interest there. But as far as the Dwight Howard signing goes, I'll just say this. good for my, Dwight Howard campaign. Me campaigning Dwight Howard's still a good all-time player, deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. I don't think I don't think I have too many people still saying that Dwight Howard shouldn't, but I will say that I'm hoping for Dwight to continue to rack up the stats, man, because Dwight Howard right now, 12th all-time in rebounds, 15th all-time in blocks. By the end of his career, if he gets that playing time that he needs, which he's going to find on the Lakers, he can get up to as high as, I think, 11th in blocks and probably as high as 7th in rebounds, just ahead of Tim Duncan. So to me, like if you're Dwight Howard, you go where you can get that playing time and keep racking up those stats, because that's one of your best arguments to get in the Hall of Fame, on top of obviously being a perennial all defensive or defensive player of the year for multiple years in a row and leading the Magic to the heights he did. But hey, get up on those all-time lists if you're Dwight Howard. Why not? All right, guys.
Everybody makes it.
I think. Yeah, well, I think Dwight Howard certainly deserves it. All right, I think that this is probably a good place to wrap it up, just over to the 2-hour mark. Does anybody else have any closing thoughts as far as free agency is concerned? Any of the moves we've seen, yet to see, anything Celtics related? Each you guys can go for whatever you want to wrap things up with.
I think it's super weird,
Jeff.
and I saw this from Keith Smith, that none of the, outside of Lonzo, none of the restricted free agents have gotten offers yet. Like Devontae Graham, no offers yet. Lauri Markkanen, no offers yet. John Collins, no offers yet. Like all these guys, there's supposedly a market for, but so far it's radio silence.
As far as the Celtics are concerned, if you're a fan and you're upset because they haven't done anything, don't really know what you were expecting, because there's not a whole lot they can do, like we just kind of talked about for 2 hours. But just stay on the lookout for those Patty Mills contracts, Otto Porter, Avery Bradley, just small deals, because everything that I've seen and the guys have seen has been they're gearing up for next year, which is a risk. But I mean, seems like Beal's very interested in the Celtics, but if that's the case, you might as well trade for him, especially if you're going to have to give up Marcus anyway. I mean, Jack, we talked about this before, but that's what it is, man.
Yeah, I think that's my thought process on it as well. I used to be in the mindset of, if you're trying to get Bradley Beal, that you should just wait till free agency to sign him. But if you're going to have to move people anyway, and talking about Marcus Smart wanting this extension, I wonder if there's a reason why all of this deal has been held up. I wonder if it's trying to get expanded. I wonder if they're trying to make a move now. Who knows? But I think if you're trying to get Bradley Beal in a Celtics uniform, you might just want to bite the bullet and move assets for it, because you're going to have to clear roster spots. You're going to have to clear money anyway.
And I will say, as soon as we hop off here, there will be Celtics news.
Of course. We've been here for 2 freaking hours. Of course, there's something's going to drop immediately after.
That's Land's idea. I'll put up there. Romeo Grant TT for DeJounte Murray. I think he's a
I like it.
And to your point, Tim, the
only issue is T.
What are you saying, Jack?
I was saying TT's already traded, so I don't.
Technically,
yes.
It's not finalized yet, though.
Yeah,
It could get rerouted. We don't.
And I
know what's happening.
That's what I was gonna say. And credit to Tim was that the thing about Tristan Thompson's deal and trading it, and what you have to do to make that work is, the idea is that now you trade Tristan Thompson and you bring back the trade exception that would be worth $9.8 million or whatever it is, right? But if you do that, then you no longer have Tristan Thompson's salary to put next to Marcus Smart and another player to match the bigger salary, because the trade exception, you can only use it to absorb a player worth less than that money. You can't add it on to those other salaries, as we've talked about in the past with the Gordon Hayward trade exception and all that stuff. I think every Celtics fan has familiarized themselves with exactly how trade exceptions work. So perhaps the Celtics, were ready to make that Tristan Thompson move, and like the Lakers with Russell Westbrook, something else came along and they started looking into it, and they said, we kind of need Tristan Thompson's salary to be able to do this. So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? NBA offseason is a crazy time. Lots of crazy stuff happening. So I'm sure, as you guys said, get ready, guys, because as soon as I hit this end broadcast button, you're going to get the Celtics news you've been waiting for. So anyway, thank you guys for listening. Be sure to subscribe, because Ev is doing daily uploads, and he's done a great job. 1.2K subscribers now, which is just skyrocketed, I think, after some of his videos going over Celtics draft picks. He went over, now I'm blanking on the French kid's name, Juan
Begarin.
Juan Begarin. And the other shoot the Celtics got from Virginia. Jack, help me with the name again.
Sam Hauser.
So I did some videos reacting to those guys joining the team, and they were great. They were great reaction videos. He's done a lot of those on potential Celtic signings, which we're still waiting on. So we'll see if we get another one for Ev to react to. And I know I'm not going to tease too much, but I know he's hoping that Spencer Dinwiddie doesn't get signed tonight to potentially talk about that tomorrow. But anyway, guys, thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, enter the giveaway. I don't think it's officially gone out yet, so you can find the details on that on some of the recent videos I've posted if you want to enter that giveaway for the $100 giveaway for the 1,000 subscribers. So thank you guys for that. And that's going to do it for us. Thanks for watching as always, and we'll see you on the next live stream whenever we end up doing one. It might not be until, maybe, I don't think we do. You guys want to do the Bannertown build-up for Summer League games? Or no, it's just...
I don't know.
Who knows?
Maybe for some. Maybe for some.
If they make the championship. But it might be until next season that we end up doing the live streams again. So anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning in to, we'll call it the Bannertown build-up. Why not? Go check out Bannertown USA and everything over there as well on Twitter. Because that's what Jack's named Tim. They're all throwing stuff up. I know it's going to be a lot of crazy stuff because of free agency too. So go check that out. Follow those guys on Twitter too. All our apps are on the screen. And once again, thank you guys for watching. We'll catch you next time.